G'day legends, today's episode is with Brandon Mitchell, or better known as Ukraine TBIC, or the best I can on social medias. And of course, his social medias will be down below. Now, Brandon has been serving as a volunteer for many months in Ukraine in mostly a medical capacity, both on the front lines and during hospitals, and has done some amazing stuff, and I think gives such a brilliant perspective on this war in such an open interview. And we were able to do this while I was away. Now, there is only one camera angle in this. As I'm traveling, I've only got one camera with me, and he just happened to be in the same city that I am, and it just worked out like that. So thank you, Brandon, so much for giving me the time to do this. I really, really appreciate all of it, and I really appreciate too, before and after the interview, talking and going over some things too. So I hope you guys enjoyed this interview. If anyone wants to participate in one of these interviews, please reach out through my email below, and all the people that support me on Patreon or any way you make all of this possible. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy this interview.
And we're just going to go anywhere, aren't we?
Just let me test this one. Yeah, and we can, mate, however you want this one to go, where not to go, you can swear, you can carry on.
The most important thing I'm not allowed to talk about is Ukrainian POWs.
You're not allowed to?
Yeah, I had a briefing about that, and the logic is quite simple. I only know one person, and not well, but if I said anything at all, and FSB watches this, let's say, for example, I say this happened, and then they've already been through their round of torture, and then they say, oh, but you told us this. Out comes the hammer again. Right. That's the logic behind that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we'll speak on PWs then.
Yeah.
We won't speak on that. But can you introduce yourself, who you are, what your background is?
Yeah, my name is Brandon Mitchell. I'm a member of Hospitalers Medical Battalion, and it's a volunteer unpaid battalion with the Ukrainian Volunteer Army.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what drove you to join Hospitalers?
That was just by chance. I thought Mr. Zelensky's speech on day 3 of the war was really charming and compelling to go volunteer and help.
What got you about that speech?
He was very humble. He was very humble in asking for help, and it was almost romantic. You know, I never did a combat tour. I was out of the army in 2007. Never ever thought about war again. Or I'm not a gun nut. Look, we're in Texas right now. I'm getting some training from the best people. But he asked for help, and I seen pictures of people. I'm going to be honest here, because nobody ever admits it. People that look like me. You know, nobody ever wants to talk about that. That struck me a little bit more than the turmoil in the Middle East. My father's family's Lebanese, but that country's been in turmoil since the 70s. So I kind of expect it to happen, but not in Europe. That was the shocking thing. That, like, in Europe in 2022, how can this... Can I swear?
Yeah,
how can this shit happen? How can this shit happen in Europe? Like, did we not know enough? And Europe's kind of been the catalyst for the 2 biggest wars. I don't want to go on too much about it, but I worked for an Estonian company. You know, I've been to Estonia, I've trained there. Russia's a big part of their foreign policy and domestic policy.
And history.
Yes. And I've got so many Polish friends because I was an amateur boxer for years in England. A lot of Polish people I knew through that, through my work. There's 1 million Poles in the UK. So I thought, after Ukraine, so I don't have kids. I thought, if I'm going to get it, it's better to die with a bullet in your chest than one in your back. That's it.
Yeah. You bring up a really interesting point there, and like you said, not many people want to talk about this, is because look like me. They're in Europe, and not many people want to talk about this. And I ask this a lot of, like, say, foreign fighters on the other hand, of, well, why aren't you fighting against genocide, war, conflict happening in Africa every day, in the Middle East for years, for basically ever in some areas? Why not there? And I think a lot of people bounce around the answer, but I'm glad you brought it up, is because you can relate here. And I think this is underlying some biases people probably don't like to say that they've got about look at the situation with refugees, that Europe happily stuck their hand up and said we'll take as many Ukrainians as want to come. It doesn't matter to declare refugee status or not, come in. But look at where Syria happened, and Syria borders Turkey. And of course Turkey is a NATO country, not EU, but then runs into the EU. And when Syrian conflict was going down, you've got people swimming across. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something realistic that a lot of people actually skirt around and don't want to talk about the legitimate, maybe, reasons behind that.
Just be honest. I think it's important to be honest, but be kind with the truth as well. So much of our world, our media, everything, that's why people come to people like you. That's why people come to my YouTube channel. They just want to be, they don't want to be fed something. They don't want it to be served a certain way. And if we do the best to tell the truth, like in life, it's not our responsibility how people interpret it.
Yeah.
I mean, would you accuse me of being racist, of saying, I'm not going to Compton at night? No, that's just stupid. That's just stupid. Let's leave it at that. But it was Europe, and it really freaked me out.
Yeah. Well, it freaked me out. I was there on the, early February, and I was there through the invasion, and there's a video somewhere of me, I think it was actually a live video, in disbelief of, I can't believe this is happening in Europe. Like, when I was somewhere like Afghanistan, I was there with the military, but it also felt like that, a war, but I was in Ukraine for 4 or 5 weeks before this. The night before, I wouldn't say the morning of the invasion, I was hungover because we were out singing karaoke together in Kramatorsk. So in a region which now, you could argue, Kramatorsk is really where the front line begins, if you ask myself. It's in large artillery range areas. Like, that's where it gets serious from there. But I was somewhere like that, drinking, carrying on, probably had a burger for dinner and singing karaoke.
Yep.
And then these happened. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening in Europe, between countries of moral, ethical people. And I know people will jump on me with this. And I'm not talking of the Kremlin, but the average Russian person, the average Ukrainian person, was just going through the motions of living their life. And then everything turned upside down like that. It's just shocking.
I had sympathies on the first couple of days. See, Estonia has, perhaps about a 40% ethnic Russian population. And I rely on stereotypes to make my life easier. A lot of people do. But generally in Estonia, the Russian population is a lower socioeconomic background. But just like anywhere in the world, the poorer people tend to give you the shirt off their back. I really gelled with them when I was there, before I decided to get plugged in, I really felt for them. How these are friends of mine, what would it be like for their kids going to school? What would it be like for them, for a job? Would they pay the price? So let's not accuse anybody of being anti-Russian. If it was Ukraine that invaded Russia, we could easily be accused of being anti-Ukrainian.
Yeah.
But it wasn't Ukraine who invaded.
But I think too, there's an element too, it was easier to hate on Russia as well, because people instinctively side with the underdog. That, hang on, because what Russia was thought to have been before the 24th, and actually, in my opinion, many think this still, is that they are the equivalent dominance of America to Mexico. That if America invaded Mexico, that is the overmatch you're talking. I think many people thought, and I think some still do think, that is the overmatch of Russia. And straight away, people sided with the underdog and were like, hey, what the fuck's going on? That you're this 6'6" guy picking on a kid. Like, they thought that was the overmatch. And, side with that. But also that Russia has a long history of being on the negative side of things as well, especially in Western media. But it also has done some horrific things. And look at every movie, every game, whatever, is a Russian guy. Now, whether that stereotype...
GoldenEye, Nintendo 64, I had so much fun killing them.
Yeah, whether the stereotype is, well, it exists for a reason or not. Whether it's correct or not doesn't matter. This is why Ukraine has been so dominant in the informational sphere for the right reasons, and also reasons that started developing against Russia from, it depends how many years back you want to go. How long's a piece of string? That this old Soviet mindset doesn't then gel into the modern world. So I think Ukraine off the bat had that massive support too, and hasn't really lost it either.
No, absolutely not. We're all part of the same hypocrisy. The American hegemony, Russia. But it's fair to judge a nation by how they treat their people. We have Amazon Prime. Half of them do not have indoor plumbing. What progress have they made since the Tsars? In the everyday living? Very little. Very little.
Yeah. It's so hard, because if you look at the systems, how they're set up in total capitalist democracies as well. But you need to understand too that, like, Ukraine as well, like the average GDP was lower for Ukraine than Russia. The corruption between Russia and Ukraine, which is something you're not allowed to talk about. And I'm sure you've got some stories of this as well. The corruption is horrific and comes from that old mindset. And I talked to my younger friends before the war, and now who are absolute patriots, but absolutely still realistic. And they're like, the problem is, they used to call it the Soviet hangover. That the Soviet Union was not long ago. And I'm under 30, so the Soviet Union to me seems like, when I think Soviet Union, I think World War II. I think way out of my memory. But it wasn't. It was fucking 30 years ago. My parents were my age before it collapsed. It's in your lifetime. And they say the Soviet hangover, this reason we've got this, was the Soviet Union bred corruption, because it was the only way to fucking get anything, was you had to, part of stealing and acquiring and whatever is part of your existence. Therefore, it's only 30 years ago. The people in charge grew up the first 30 years in that. And that's the reason that still exists. To a reason, a really, really smart guy, and I will never do this justice, is Lex Friedman, if you've heard of him, podcaster.
Heard of him.
Incredibly smart. He grew up in the Soviet Union. And he talks about this, that there is a degree of having to steal and acquire to put literally food on the table. So there's a degree of that too. But how did your mindset change towards your friends in Estonia who were of Russian ethnicity throughout this?
And there was 2-3 people I thought to send a WhatsApp message when I decided to go to the war. And I told them my intention to go and help Ukraine. I was going to be a humanitarian. I don't know what I was going to be, but I was going to go help, undefined. But I told them my intention that I would go to help. Not one of them responded.
Right.
Yeah. Here's what it is.
Yeah.
Here's what it is.
What about others? Have others reached out or anything?
No. And when I say I know ethnic Russian Estonians, I know a handful. Okay. I'm a member of the 12-step fellowship. You know those people that sit around the rooms that don't drink anymore in churches?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm one of them. So over 11 years. So when I worked in Estonia, I went to those meetings and I knew many of those people. 3, 4 of them, 5 of them maybe, that I would keep in contact with. But not one reply. They were great to me when I was there, though. Beautiful hospitality. I've not heard from them since.
It's a real pity. Were you an alcoholic before? Is that why you were?
I'm an addict. I put one drug into me, alcohol. I like my cigarettes, but alcohol or drugs, and I can't stop. That started from a very young age. That ruined my army career. That ruined many things in life. 26 years old, I joined a 12-step fellowship. I've not had a drink or a drug since.
Wow.
Biggest asset to my life I have, if I'm honest.
Mate, good on you. That's really something that you should be really, really proud of too.
Yeah. Well, you don't pat a dog for not pissing on the rug. Only addicts get that.
Yeah, no, I get that. But, people should be very proud of things they overcome in life. Life is, it's not a destination, it's a journey. And at the end of the day, all the shit we've been through is part of who we are. And, if you hadn't been through things like that, you wouldn't be the man sitting in front of me here either as well. So, I get the terminology, but, there's many people who never lift themselves out of that either.
That's true.
So let's talk about then when you went to Ukraine. What was your first initial thoughts when you got there, when you crossed the border? I don't know where you crossed, like maybe Medica border or something from Poland. I'm not sure.
Well, it was a combination of relief and disappointment.
Right.
Yeah. So it took me a bit of a process to get ready to go, to settle things with my girlfriend, settle things with my employer. I wanted to do it as responsibly as one can.
Yeah.
Do the most irresponsible thing you could ever do with your life. It was March 16th I crossed over. I lived in Sweden. I was with 4 other Swedes. We were put together through a signal group, 150 people. Only about 5 or 6 ever went. A lot of people talked about it. I had a contact from Canada, a friend who knew a friend who knew a friend, retired soldier. I think he did 3 years back in the heyday when the Canadian Army was in Germany in the 80s. When you could buy a beer for 50 cents. Yeah, that's the kind of soldier he was. But this guy set up a safe house in in Lviv, and I had his contact. So he actually picked us up. I think it was Medica, and crossing over the border. There's all the tents, there's all these NGOs, the big ones, the small ones, the Christians, the Buddhists, the Muslims, the Jews. There was everything there. There was free soup, free coffee, free SIM cards as well.
Yeah.
It was like a tent city. It was like going to a royal show in Australia, going to a state fair, and CNN was there. We crossed the border. He picked us up, and it was like any dirty border town. Eastern Europe. I've traveled through Africa. Border towns are dodgy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, real dodgy. This guy picked us up and he drove us to Lviv. We get to Lviv and there's hipsters.
Yeah.
I just call it hipsters. That's just my
your go-to.
Yeah, my go-to word. There's people drinking coffee. There's life on the streets. I was very disappointed and relieved. He had a safe house. It was, I think they're called estheticians. You get your nails done, get your hair done, you get everything done in one place. It was in a basement. It was not in Cyrillic. It was in English. It was a busted out business. It was called The Secret Place. I shit you not. The Secret Place was a safe house. Probably about 200 people would have gone through there. And he just drops us off there. There's about 4 or 5 rooms in a basement. Probably a bit of black mold, I suspect, in there. There's one toilet. There's a shower that has kind of a garden hose in it. And there would have been 50 guys in there. Afghan, Iraq veterans, mostly British.
It wasn't like a big, beautiful building, like with a fence next to the firehouse. Because I went through a safe house there as well.
It was in the basement. It had like stucco walls.
Right.
And there was like a wheelchair access. So we're just stepping over people and find a place to sleep that night. And God, it's day 1 of the war for me, and I'm already smelling guys' toe fungus. Yeah. No, but there was a guy named Swampy who later on,
I met Swampy. And I reckon we were at the same safe house because I was at in Lviv as well with Swampy.
Yeah.
In a safe house.
I never met him yet. That came later. But apparently these guys, Swampy knew someone who knew someone. They went off and tried to join the Georgian Legion, and they came back with stories that, now that I know everything I know, I don't think they were true. They only gave us 1 magazine, or they gave us 3 rifles between 10 men. That doesn't make sense. At the time, it sounded really scary. So that reaffirmed, I'm not joining the Legion, because the story at the time was, I want to help in Ukraine, but not the Legion. That was, this is March 16th. But apparently Swampy had secured that place for them to stay. He helped a lot of people. The guy who hosted us. There were a lot of guys there, like some who claimed to have been to Kiev. Everybody was going to do extractions. We're going to go get people. And it's very bizarre now that I think about it, because I don't mean to be up my own arse, but I'm held in fairly high esteem, in Ukraine. Apparently I've done stuff, but I'm very limited. I'm the horse. but I'm with a Ukrainian who's a damn good jockey. How are they going to go do these extractions in Dnipro and Kiev and anyway?
Bro, you and I, just sorry to cut you off, but you and I lived the exact same Lviv experience. I went to this safe house.
Yeah, yeah.
And they wanted to do extractions. That's
mostly British boys, I think.
Yeah, all British guys, yeah. A lot of them, there was a lot of like infighting and shit and wanted to do... Now, I was there because, well, instead of the horse, I was there for a fucking lift because I'm a journalist. Like, that's what I was a journalist when I was there.
You know the place.
I know the place and I know the exact shit and people coming back through from the legions.
Guys, I've been to Kiev, I've been to Irpin. That was too heavy. One guy, he was 50. He was like a Gulf War veteran, you know, like, what was that, 100-hour war?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I'm too old for this shit. I'm 53. And I was like, wow, you must have seen something. Like, I was scared for Kiev.
Yeah.
One of the Swedish boys that I came over with, I didn't have any social media at the time. I'm not going to say I'm like a MGTOW or something like that, but I just hated the narcissism of 1, 2, 3, look at me. You know, so I was off all that shit for like 2 years, almost. They had Instagram. So one of the Swedes found this guy. He's a Canadian ex-Special Forces guy. He said, do you want to join Hospitalers Medical Battalion? And my whole thing was, I don't want to get anybody killed because I haven't held a rifle since 2007, and if I can't change a mag in 1.5 seconds and double tap, dash down, crawl just like everyone else, I'm going to get someone killed. I knew there was bullshit, but I wasn't going to lie, you know? So I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a humanitarian worker. But I didn't like them either, you know? They smelled funny, and there was no reason to smell funny at that time. These Swedish boys, we had medics, Afghan veterans, 3 of them had a medical background, and one was a Swedish Ranger who was just the coolest guy in the world. He's dead now. They said, do you want to come with us? And I was like, well, what can I do there? It's like, well, you're a good guy. And I was like, yeah, I am a good guy. You know, like it was like I'm a neurotic, you know.
Yeah.
I thought I'd be an ambulance driver. We went to Kiev because I couldn't stay at the secret place. I was in Lviv for a week, and I realized this is not the right place to be. This is backwards, not forward. I need to get away from these people, you know, the extractions people, the people with the bad teeth, and anyway, I took a chance. I went to Kiev with them. I thought I'd be an ambulance driver. I can drive a Transit, a Sprinter better than I can any car. I was in the events industry for years, so I'll be a good ambulance driver. They didn't want that. They wanted a gunner. So, yeah, I signed up. That would have been a week after we arrived in Ukraine. Went to Kiev, took the train, stayed overnight in the train station because it's curfew and you could be shot. Yeah. Probably true at the time, that early on.
Well, that early on, absolutely.
That early on, yeah.
Yeah, I got held a couple of times at gunpoint because I was out. They thought I was a spy. Yeah. Which, fair enough too. People are like, oh, how could they do that? I'm like, if fucking Melbourne was getting invaded with air raids and some random foreigner was out after dark filming shit,
yeah,
I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing here too? So it's fair enough.
I'm just here for the cricket. Yeah, right.
Yeah, fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah, that was it. It was going, everything, the whole war, the biggest fears was just going into the unknown. And Kiev was a big unknown at the time. I applaud myself even. I applaud everybody who came in. God, some guys came in February, but everybody came, I'd say, up till March, even April. I really applaud people's courage for coming into the unknown. I've got to. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, well, it was completely unknown. What was known was that it was Russia fighting Ukraine, and people were like, well, this isn't going to end well for Ukraine, even at that point. You know, you have the Ukrainian military versus Russian military of what people's ideas were of those militaries. Like I said earlier in this, that you're like, holy shit, what are we actually going up against here? Because we didn't know. We didn't know at that point. One of my commanders on Jungle Training Wing, stuck with me forever, used to say hindsight is the foresight of arseholes.
Yes.
And it is so true that people go, oh, I knew that. No, you fucking didn't. You did not have the foresight. No one, whether in the intelligence community, through to some dickhead with a flag in your bio on Twitter, none of you if we went back to February 23, would have said in 18 months, we're going to be sitting here seeing a counteroffensive being successful by Ukraine against Russia that has only taken 20% of land. Everyone would have told you to get fucked.
Oh, mate, it'd be like betting on Leicester. You know what I mean? The odds were 1 in 5,000 that they would win the season.
Yeah.
English football.
Yeah.
But they did win. But that was it. And the media didn't do us any favours, because something had to bring us out of the Corona cycle, now looking back, and it was pitched as World War III. I thought we were all going to die, but I had like a moral compulsion. I should do this. But even in Lviv, you know how the air raids work, right? The first one is like incoming, then the second air raid siren is it's all clear. That's when I seen that in Lviv. The CNN, they were outside for the second one, but reporting it as the first one. You know, Canadian news, which I hoped would have been better, they were talking about a Canadian battalion of about 500 men that nobody had ever seen on the news, on a big network that was defending Kiev. You know, that was a fictitious battalion that never existed.
I've never heard of them.
No, I've never heard of. I never found them, but I thought maybe I'd have a chance. You know what I mean? That if I could join them, because I grew up in Canada, I was in the reserves before I joined the British Army. Like, if I could be with people that speak my own language and know how to, you know, run a section attack the same way as maybe I could contribute.
Yes.
That was the only terms I was going to join at the time, a combat unit. This fictitious battalion. That never existed, but we were sold that in the media. Yeah, so I'd yet to see it.
So you say that you got to Kiev with hospitals and we need a gunner.
Yeah.
Where does that then lie you between being a humanitarian and being a combatant?
Well,
because in my eyes, a humanitarian is handing out food packets to anyone who comes to them and treating people not holding a rifle.
Yeah, and a lot of people keep calling me a humanitarian. We should look up the word humanitarian, what it actually means in the Oxford Concise Dictionary. I don't know what it means. I couldn't tell you.
I'll do it while you're talking.
Yeah, you do it right now. I came to help, regardless, on the Ukrainian side. Now, is a humanitarian neutral? Okay, is there a Russian humanitarian? Is there a Ukrainian humanitarian? The Red Cross claims to be neutral. Well, they must not be helping Russia either, because I haven't seen any other proof of work. Okay, you can go outside the Intercontinental Hotel in Kiev. Russia, if you're listening, that's where all the white Land Cruisers are parked, right by NBC and everyone. They haven't got a stitch of mud on them.
Well, it's the most expensive hotel in Kiev.
Yeah, and the most expensive Land Cruiser that you can buy.
Yeah,
you know,
200 series, 300 series Land Cruiser. I want one.
Yeah, I could steal that, paint that green, bring it to Donbass, and that would be moral in my eyes. I haven't done it, and I'm not going to do it. But when they asked that, Oleg, he's become my friend, it's like, this is your chance to help. Do you know what I mean? This is your chance, Brandon. So I agreed to it in principle. And my friend Nico, he was the cool Swede. He died in Bakhmut in December. And he's like, oh, you're going to be a gunner? I'm a gunner, bro. Cool. And I was like, yeah. But some of our ambulances, we lived in St. Michael's. St. Michael's is a very prominent church. All the politicians love to get a photo up there.
Yes. That's
the place. We lived in the basement there. Ambulances, white Sprinters, things that weren't ambulances, they were getting painted green. And I don't know I think they must use a zinc paint because they were drying fast. You'd see a white van, an hour or two later, you'd see a green van coming back, making teams, driver, gunner, paramedic, doctor, all different medical levels. We would have EMTs, paramedics, veterinarians, gynecologists. We have a vascular surgeon. We have neurosurgeon interns. Now, in allocation of resources, a neurosurgeon working on an ambulance, when you do neurosurgeon, quite often they don't even see blood.
No.
It's a very specific. Anyway, I had a chance. Do you want to join? But I didn't want to lie. There was about 20, 30 foreigners there at the time, and people were coming and going, teams were getting made. Ukrainians did not have time for us. Some that spoke English, welcome. There was no medal. Big problem. I think a lot of people a lot of Ukrainians were very skeptical about foreigners. I've seen this right up until now in the war. And I don't know why it is. I think they have a suspicious culture. It's been explained to me. Why would someone come to help us? They're here to take from us.
I have
You probably
loose
explored this.
connections back through to the Soviet Union. My father was actually you might have heard Australia to talk about the stolen generation.
Yes.
Now, the stolen generation typically is, not typically, is spoken about the indigenous population.
Mm-hmm.
My father was actually part of that, but from a Russian, or I shouldn't say Russian, from the Soviet Union. Now, we actually had no idea about our background for the majority of all of our lives, but we have very, very loose family that is in Belarus, Ukraine, and as well, and these are far extended, but I've had it explained to me I don't even know who she is in my circle in my family tree. I don't know because
Your cousin's
I have no
cousin.
idea on that.
Yeah.
But no, none of your family want to see you because they're all very suspicious. And she explained it's a very suspicious culture too. I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, but I'm in Ukraine, and this is some loose family connection. No, they're suspicious that you are this. And the reason of that was, look at the Soviet Union, that the KGB, GUR had such or GRU, whatever they were, had such a huge influence in the community, but not only a lot of agents, but also your neighbour could dob you in. And this was the concerning thing we saw with the recent, spicy flu, was your neighbour dobbing you in on things too, and that suspicion then grew. But that was toxic there too. So there is this suspicion of foreigners like this. And I even got this before the war, when I'd go before the 24th invasion war. I mean, the war was only being ongoing, but people get an Uber or a taxi or a Bolt. Why are you here? Why are you going to the border? Why are you going, fucking suspicious, which, fair enough. What is an Australian with a camera doing here?
Yes.
So that, I absolutely get that.
I don't know, what is it, understanding, a bit of empathy, a lot of patience. A lot of patience is required there. It's a different place. It's a different place, and they come from a different background, and dealing with things like that. I was 35. I turned 36 in a hospital in Zaporizhzhia Oblast. I would have lost my shit with them if I was 22, 23, 24, and I seen that happen with a lot of people. Captain America was my favorite guy from Utah. Nice young guy, bit of an idiot. Yeah, and he wanted his medal day one when he was there. He never got made onto a team, to one of our teams. It came to the point, we had a young South African boy, about 19 years old, maybe 20, and he would disappear during the day. You should have seen him, big belly on him. And it didn't make sense what he was talking about. Yes, we went off today to train the Ukrainians on the javelin. It's like, you're 19, 20 from South Africa and you're this big. What unit did you serve in? Your body frame and your age, it would not, the training that you claim to have it would not tolerate that. It just, compulsive liars.
Yeah.
Absolute compulsive liars. Captain America, when we had to do our interviews, all the foreigners, this is one of my biggest lessons I took away. He was before me. There was an American Special Forces guy. There was a British guy from the Dragoons, nice guy, Paul Whittle. And there was the Ukrainian girl in the middle, with her laptop. And they started vetting foreigners. I don't know how they vetted them, but they just asked questions. And the question was, what did you do before the war? So he said, I was in 5th Group Special Forces, trained with 10th Mountain Division, been to Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. I was an E3, 4G. I was... nobody outside of America knows what an E4 is, an E3. If you don't have the intelligence or empathy to understand that people don't know your system. But he started using all these weird acronyms. And they said to him, okay, well, we've got your file here. You can help them pack boxes. And I was next. And they said, what did you do before the war? I said, I built kitchens for IKEA. And they looked at each other. It's like, any military experience? I said, no combat. I was in the army years ago. I was in Northern Ireland. And the Americans like, Northern Ireland, what's that? And I was like, well, it's like Bosnia 2000, pretty calm. The British guy said, yeah, he'll be good. What regiment were you in? Black Watch? He's like, that's a good regiment. I was like, yeah, I'm not a hard bastard, but they are, you know. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I just come to help. Do you want to go to the front? Yeah, I do want to go to the front. I'll help if that's what you want. No problem. About 3 days later, I was made onto a team. All during that time, we were doing training, an English language syllabus, an American nurse, she's fantastic, her name's Rebecca, a French intern in emergency medicine, Edouard. They put together an English language syllabus, because as teams were coming and going, Irpin and Bucha was happening, so team rotations were short, like 2 days, depending on their supplies, 2 days, 3 days, 8 days was the longest. Ukrainians were training at day and night. They made a program for us, a tactical medicine training program, the March Protocol, which you're probably quite familiar with. Yeah. So,
can you break it down for anyone who doesn't know the protocols?
So the first thing you got to address is massive bleeding, airways issues to clear anything out, people's respiration, circulation, and hypothermia. The most important for me is stop a bleed, keep their airways going, and hypothermia is so underestimated.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but not only hypothermia too, is your extraction of keeping someone warm who's lost blood. Mm-hmm. That's why you'll see space blankets. And of the March Protocol, more typically people who've done first aid will be familiar with doctors ABC. And the military side, and this is me waffling, but the military side actually changed the doctors ABC that people are normally familiar, so danger, response, send for help, blah, blah, blah. Airways, breathing, circulating, whatever. The military side is actually Doctor C, ABCD. So danger, response, fucking war zone, but don't stand in front of a machine gun. And then catastrophic hemorrhage, which is the same as massive bleeding. But then at the end is actually extraction. And part of that is hypothermia, hyperthermia, you both ways as well. But of course, losing blood as well. You need to stop people going in shock, keeping them warm, fluids, things like that.
It's a rolling snowball.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
With hypovolemia, so you've lost blood, you're going to be naturally colder. The colder you are, you lose your clotting abilities, your blood. Like when you have hypothermia, you get a punch in the nose. That's not going to stop bleeding.
Yeah.
Got to keep people warm. I felt really good. Like I wanted to learn these things. And as simple as a tourniquet is, and I've seen so many Ukrainian boys, like I know, they're the most confident men in the world, you know. They must really fancy themselves out with the ladies. They're great guys. But as simple as a tourniquet, I wasn't willing to leave that to chance in training. Do it again and again and again,
yeah,
and again and again.
Well, you'll never rise to the occasion. You'll sink to the level of your training.
This is true. Like the first guy who ever died on me, it was because of a chest seal. He had no chest seal applied. That was later on my first rotation. But the things I learned in training, it's real. You know, it's everything is applicable. Yeah. Everything is applicable. Some things I haven't seen yet. But yeah, I got made onto a team with that French doctor, brilliant young guy, Edouard. He, an anesthesiologist named Dima from Kharkiv. But one thing about hospitalers, I must say, I've never said this before, and I've done a lot of interviews. Yana Zinkovic is our commanding officer. Now, look, we all know there's a corruption in Ukraine. I've seen a few things, small things that just wouldn't cut it in a Western society. But I believe that the woman is beyond corruption. One thing that really impressed me, our first rotation at the end of the Battle of Kiev was to be in Zaporizhzhia Oblast. Dima comes from Kharkiv. His grandmother's house was hit by the Russians. She went to live in a shelter, which was hit by the Russians. An anesthesiologist is a very important doctor. Basically, a surgeon and an anesthesiologist do everything in a stabilization.
Yes.
My whole job is to clear a path for them. But he's worried about his grandmother. Our commanding officer delayed our rotation and sent 2 people, not Dima, it was going to be Dima, to get his grandmother and to bring her to Kiev. And out of her own money, battalion money, let's be honest, to get his grandmother in Kiev and get her situated, because he was going to be gone for a couple of months. She wanted his mind clear. That would not happen in a regular battalion. That would definitely not happen in NATO.
No.
So that's something as simple as that is. I will never forget that. But she had a clear anesthesiologist, a clear head, for a good 2-month rotation. He's still serving with us. He's marrying one of the girls in our battalion. Funny how that works.
Yeah. There's something I wanted to speak on earlier, talk about Captain America and these certain people that are attracted to, say, Ukraine to go there. And a lot of these are just Instagram warriors too. We had the saying of these guys, we called them fictional characters. They're living out their fictional lives through social media, because if you post a photo, you could take a photo in Lviv with an AK camouflage, put it on social media, and 99% of the population think they're in Ukraine on the front line fighting. So you have fictional characters, but there's also, and I'm coining my own term here, the Western saviour complex. That these Westerners who go have this saviour complex of that I'm going to come and save Ukraine. That I'm a medic from the Australian Army, or I'm a soldier from the American Army. Get out of my way. You guys don't know what you're fucking doing. I'll fight this war. And there's this degree of hang on. They may not speak the same fucking language as you, but there's a hell of a lot of fucking very competent people in Ukraine.
Yes.
You whatever guy from NATO army, you are not going to come and save this. And I've seen so much of this. And this is why I think there's a lot of pushback, at least initially from a lot of the Ukrainians, was no. Give me some ammo, give me a weapon. We'll do it. We've got our units. We've got our whatever. We've got our hospitals. We've got our systems. You are coming here with this attitude of, I'm coming here to save you. We're coming here to liberate you. And it's like that meme from Iraq and Afghanistan. You've now been liberated. And I think there was this bit of that too, of like, we're going to come and it's like, no. We need support. Not you to bring your complex here and try and win it. Ukraine, you didn't need that. And I think the average Ukraine needed support. Don't get me wrong. If there was not support in Ukraine, it would have been the 72-hour war. It would have been that. But there's a lot of individuals go with that mindset of, I'm here and no one else knows what they're on about because I'm here. A lot of these guys, look at James Vasquez, and he's just the pinnacle epitome of that we're here for the fame, the glory, and to be a saviour, not to support hands-on.
Well, 3 of the most competent people I have met in the country, regardless of nationality, were Americans.
I'm not saying they're not competent.
Yes.
Yeah.
My friend Casey, that I've come all the way here to train with, and we were doing fire and movement all day long. He's a sniper. He's a medic. He's now employed in the civilian field here. Where I'd be without him, I don't know. The way he could explain things to me. Rebecca, we've had a bit of an interesting time recently. I suppose friends have to have trouble together after about 15, 16 months. I hope it recovers. A phenomenal nurse.
Yeah.
And there's a few frauds out there.
Of course. Most
of them have been weeded out. I'm not going to call them out because nobody wins. I've done some work with the Legion off camera. Some of those boys are phenomenal, and I judge them by their intent. One of the most competent men, and I admire him very much, former US Marine, one of the drone team commanders. And we had a little cry one day during the follow Bakhmut between the two of us. He was not on duty. I think he had a couple of drinks, but about the human loss. Over 10 foreigners died in the month of January between Pete Reed was the last one, February 2nd, I believe. I knew Pete. 2 of my friends were the first ones to die. One of them was a good friend. But that man in the Legion, he made an active effort to discourage non-combatants to go into places where they shouldn't go. People were pushing the gauntlet. You know, fantastic. It all comes down to, Willie, intention. Okay, I don't care if you're a binman. I don't care if you're a doctor. I've seen shitty doctors. You know, like a lot of people in life, they work hard to a certain point so they can have an easy life, so they can plateau. They don't work on themselves, and that's every field. But the problem in our culture, and there's a lot of Canadians that are full of shit too. There's a lot of British that are full of shit too. It's in our culture. Oh, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. What did you do? What did you do? I don't want to pick a fight with Americans. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran. You did 4 years in Nebraska. Do you know what I mean? You get 20% on your hiring score. Just some people join up and they don't talk about this. I talked to this with an American soldier. Nobody will admit it. Some of them just join up for better employment opportunities later on. They do not have that culture in Ukraine. You know, like my friend Maxime, who I work to fundraise for, one of many people, I admire him. He asks a U.S. soldier that comes to our house one night, that got actually blown up that night. It was interesting. He said, were you in your country's military? And he's like, yeah, I was in cavalry. And very condescending to Maxime. Maxime's, what is cavalry? He says, it's reconnaissance. And he says, oh, so you are a real soldier? He doesn't consider himself a real soldier. He's a very successful self-employed plumber. He joins up on February 24th. He's not a career soldier. I asked Maxime later on, like a couple of days later, I said, you know, that guy is not your friend. You know, your English is very good, but his tone is what we call condescending, talking down to you. How many men have you killed, Maxime? And in our culture, we're not supposed to ask that, right? Yeah. You know, you never ask anybody, well, what was it like over there? Oh, it was pretty bad. You know, a mortar went off over there. There's some guys who've seen some shit, okay? But there's a lot of guys who ride it for the rest of their life, okay, who... Jocko Willink, for example, a great guy, I'm sure. He's made a whole culture out of it and made millions out of it to aspire to be that. They don't have that shit in Ukraine. Maxime, how many guys did you kill? Oh, Brandon, not that many. I have not killed 100, I know for sure. I said, what? I said, but you don't understand, Brandon. When you have good machine gun fundamentals and you have good position during Russian advance, this is possible. He says, there is men who've killed many, many more. And I'm like, you killed 100. So I'm thinking Vasily Zaitsev. Do you know what I mean? Like enemy. There's some exceptional, but we still know those names, like the Finnish sniper who just like popped it. Yes. So, but he just wants to do the job so he can go home to his wife, he can go home to his daughter, and they don't have that pressure. Because I had that pressure and I fucked up my whole army career, and because I felt I'd be more of a man if I joined the army. Do you know, and I could be all that I could be, or be the best, as the British. I don't know what the motto is for Australians, that it would make me feel a little bit more of a man. And that's what the Ukrainians don't have. They don't have that 5th Group Special Forces when trained with 10th Mountain Division. When they don't have that shit. Yeah,
but also that, speaking of army guys, here is the guys that have really done shit.
Yes.
Really done shit. Don't talk about that shit. Like, I have some friends who have done, a lot of my friends, including myself, have done absolutely fuck all in their careers in the military.
Like me.
And then I have friends who were absolute hitters. One of my closest mates, I won't say him by name, but got into the Special Air Service, being the SAS, in 97 and left in 15. So did almost 20 years, 18 years in the Special Air Service before the towers fell. Served as well on a exchange with Delta Force. Oh, wow. And as well exchanges with 22 SAS in Britain. Hard guy.
Busy man.
Fucking, well, he was, I can't say too much, but he was on an operation, and that operation was cancelled when he said he watched on a black and white TV between the first and second tower fall, and then they were some of the first guys to go and fly in from there. That sort of ops that they were doing. And you meet him, and he's just, I don't know any of all I know about him is from other guys who, you know, such and such. Oh, yeah, he did blah, blah, blah. And I'm a very close friend of him. And, oh, yeah, whatever. Yeah, that was my job. That's what he did. And, of course, it's not in our culture to ask how many people you kill. And he wouldn't tell me anyway. But never brings it up. Go to the pub with him all the time. Never talks about it. And, like, and here's another example of this. I have another dear friend of mine, Mark Donaldson, VC. Victoria Cross recipient, as high as you fucking get. Corporal Mark Donaldson, SAS VC, great book he's got as well. Very, very difficult childhood and went on to be the highest. When I came out of hospital for chemotherapy, the first person to message me was Dono.
Heart of gold.
But as well, and I've had dinner with him only, not too recently, but as well, he was like, oh mate, you should be so proud of your service, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? And these guys at the pinnacle, they don't have that attitude. And I say this to people, because 99% of people watching this are civilians, that it is known that if someone keeps mentioning this and what they've done and blah, 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 they're the guys that have done fuck all. The real hitters, you don't fucking know.
No. And I'm so glad we're talking about this, because I felt that pressure my whole life, that I never stacked up, you know.
Yeah,
and the reality is, you know, the best guy I ever knew in the army was Sergeant Friesen. He was Royal Canadian Regiment. He was on his way out, so he gets a good posting as they joined the reserve units, because I joined the TA, you know, the reserve as a kid. We adored him. You know, Sergeant Happel, these guys who've been to Bosnia, they were there like when it was on, you know, in the 90s. And we just adored those guys. You know, he got me a contract, a full-time contract, because I was into drugs. I was selling drugs. I was doing bad things. But they were like father figures. You know, I don't know, he probably hasn't done the shit I've done, you know, since Ukraine. But I adore that man. That's a good man. Community service. He didn't join up for that, but do you know how many young men joined the army, joined the reserves, that could have gone to jail, he saved a lot of lives.
Yeah.
That's the way, but I'm an older man now and I see that, but that's what gets sold to us, because the Canadian Army is the best, American is crap. Excuse me, you know what I mean? We have a bigger weight problem than you. You know what I mean? It's appalling. It doesn't make sense. No offense, Canada. You know, because we're more patriotic than Americans, because we're the little guy. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. It's like Kiwis, how they talk about you Aussies, you know what I mean, in the rugby. It doesn't even make the news in Aussie. It's like, yeah. Oh, we beat the Aussies. They celebrate for 2 days. Yeah. I come from that culture. Everybody needs something. You know what I mean? British Army's the same. Oh, we're the best in the world. I'll tell you what, they're a lot tougher than the Canadian boys. And they're not, they were pretty liberal with that sort of stuff.
The Brits are the most aggressive humans to ever rule. Why do you think the Brits ruled the entire world?
Because they had a few Scotsmen up front.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we talked about all that, because at the end of the day, whatever you were, whatever patch you've got on, you got to live with you.
Yeah.
You know, it's up and down. I've done many of these interviews with people, and I'm doing my job. You know, we're getting more supplies, we're getting more money, we're getting more, but I got to go back and do my job. But there's people who do better than me. I'm a poster boy, Willie. I've done a few things, but there's a lot of people who've done a lot more.
Yeah.
But I'm cool. I'm kind of cool with that.
But I feel you as well, because when I was diagnosed with, you know, my brain tumour and whatever, I of course was taken out. I was undeployable, and to a degree became a poster boy for the army too, in a way.
In diversity, they didn't have a brain tumour yet. They got everyone else. They got women. They got LGBT.
We've got the colours. We've got the flag. We've got the Willie. No, but like, so legitimately, I became a bit like that, and I was like, what the fuck? And that became difficult, because I saw myself as one of the fucking boys. Like, I don't want this. Especially after I got my OAM off the Queen, that became even more so. But when I say the best thing I've done in my entire life and career was the last 6 months of my career, say, although I was undeployable and whatever, was I was put in command of some guys who were leaving the defence for medical issues and whatever, and helping them and seeing them move through those. They were downgraded medically, so they had two paths really. Was either rehab up to getting back into the fold, or then getting out and getting the correct things they're getting, so like pensions or money or whatever it is, or care, whatever. And that was by far the best thing I've done in my life, because it actually was external to myself, and from that
you were helping them sort their affairs.
Yeah, but I can completely get you for being a bit of a poster boy to that. But anyone will never look down upon people either. That the only people who've ever called me a dickhead have done less than I. You would have never had someone who served in Deltas, SEALs, say any of those units or any doctor, surgeon who's really about the game,
Yes.
look down upon you and go, "Hey, Brandon, you're shit," because the people at that level, they're not like that. And I think people need to. I know we're getting philosophical. No, what's the word I'm looking at? Philosophical. I couldn't think of my own brain. Blame the tumour. But it's very, very true.
It's true.
But you talk about as well. You said that you're a gunner. Were you driving around in vehicles with red crosses with weapons? How did you feel about that being from a Western military? That's like a big sort of no-no from there.
Some medics have them, some don't.
Yeah.
Okay. It goes down to a brigade level. I've had a couple of guns, and they've always been given to me at the brigade level. Okay. 93 Brigade, they're all packing. 28 Brigade, the medics, not so much. And I don't know how that works. I am not a spokesman. I'm not Starsky. Andrei's become a friend of mine. He can give you facts. I'm like a dog. I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Red Crosses on many of them. The Ukrainian ambulances, we call them Bogdans. They're the Chinese Great Wall vans, with the box on the back.
Yeah.
Tough as nails, but only 120 horsepower. It's shit.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. They generally have Red Crosses on them. A lot of the Humvees have Red Crosses on them. Quite often you see the white ambulance, it'll say like Medichna, it'll be like with the red and the yellow on it. Those are civilian ambulances. A lot of our ambulances, I don't want to say a lot, but quite a few I've seen come back with holes in them. Bullet holes, Some of them bigger than AK-74, bigger than a 5.45, so that's a deliberate attack. People can talk about this all the time, okay? But if you wear a uniform, you are a combatant, okay? So there's no... I guess all is fair in love and war.
Yeah, I guess so, but it's one of those things of like, where does the line... I don't have coverage in this building, but where does the line between humanitarian and combatant lie? Because in my definition of a humanitarian, is completely neutral to the situation. So that a humanitarian treats whoever, you don't have a side in this, you're not, a weapon-holding, flag-wearing member. That is military. And military medics, where the humanitarian front is, it doesn't matter if it's a Russian, a Ukrainian, a civilian, a dog. That doesn't matter.
We've treated them all.
Yeah, but imagine if... and
that's my experience.
What I'm going to is imagine if Hospitalis said we're starting a group in Russia, and we're going to go to the front line in Bakhmut and treat Wagner PMC. How would that look? In my mind, that still fits the humanitarian front.
We're not humanitarians, though. We never advertise ourselves for being humanitarians. I said I went to Ukraine with the intention to do humanitarian work because... I told you I didn't want to be a soldier because I thought to myself, well, if I wasn't an underwater knife fighter, if I wasn't like Captain America, I would get everyone killed.
Yeah.
But I wanted to help Ukraine above all. I didn't have hate for Russia. Even to this day, I'm sorry to disappoint people. I don't know how I feel about the average Russian. I really don't. But it wasn't that I was going there for love to help Ukraine.
Yeah.
So the humanitarian, I've done a lot of humanitarian things, civilian evacuation work. That's the only reason I'm here with you today. Because when I started social media 2 months in the war, you have to be very considerate what you film with the army. My YouTube channel, for example, has raised a lot of money.
Like it? What is it?
For the army. Just type in Brandon Mitchell, you'll find me. I've got a small cult following. I did civilian evacuation work for a long time. You would consider that humanitarian. Okay, let's talk about that, for example. There's two schools of thought. How would one go about doing that work? There's church groups. They help as well. They got the sprinter vans. They usually sit back, people with four-wheel drives who will go in. I mean, these are villages like Novolagonsk near Svitlodarsk. That was a shit show. I only got asked to do that by a volunteer. Ukraine has a volunteer culture that people don't really seem to... It's not talked about a lot. They volunteer with humanitarian or they volunteer with the army. Every brigade has volunteers. Volunteers that specialize in drones, that specialize in this. My friend Dimitri was Nova Post Spetsnaz. He delivered packages for soldiers. He'd go pick it up, bring them up to second line, anywhere you want, from Siversk all the way down to Mayorsk, to the demarcation line.
Yeah.
We don't have that land anymore, but what a great service. But to do civilian evacuation with him, why? Because somebody asked, who are these people? They're people that decided they want to live on the Ukrainian side and the Russian advance is impending. You know, I've been on the Russian side. Those people, I'm sure some people wanted to stay for Russia. Some of them decided. Most people don't want to leave because it's home.
Yes.
This is home. This is what people don't understand. People are not pro-Ukraine, pro-Russia. They're little poor people, simple lives. You know what a bogan is?
Yeah.
They ain't going nowhere. Yeah. A redneck ain't going nowhere. A chav ain't going nowhere because they've never been anywhere. How could they imagine, if you didn't see it for yourself in real life, the people who don't go abroad on holidays, the people in my country who go to Cuba or Dominican but they don't step off the resort, or in Mexico because you're dead, those people ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
Because they ain't got nowhere to go in their mind. Yeah, a lot of those people have died. They've died. They've been caught between the fire. They decide they want to leave. I'm going to be quite honest. A lot of them are left at the bell curve, the ones who stay till the end. I don't mean to be cruel, but they are not... there's a lot of alcoholism, a lot of elderly people. They're disenfranchised. You know, that's humanitarian work. But how do we do that? Do we go with a big red cross, or do we go in a green vehicle fast? And everybody I know who's effective in that work, the opinion is still divided this far in the war.
Yeah.
I know 2 British volunteers, humanitarian volunteers, never held a gun in their life. I didn't know Chris Parry, but I knew Andrew Bagshaw. He was shot in the back of the head by Wagner. And I know because their bodies got sold back. I don't know the details of how they got sold back. Okay, and my friend Ignat, he's quite prominent on social media, and he's actually from Russia originally. Okay, he's one of the most effective volunteers in Ukraine. We got their bodies back. Andrew's mother is a dame from New Zealand. His parents founded their own hospital in Christchurch. Very prominent people. Andrew never spoke of any of this. He was a geneticist. They went to get a babushka in Soledar. They never came back. Me and Dimitri, this is in January, we went to try to get them, find the babushka. We got maybe within 300 meters of where they were killed. Soledar fell over the next day we lost that. I'm not trying to paint, I'm just telling you what happened. He had a 545 in the back of his skull. Okay. So the logic of doing this work, like the Red Cross, you know, because people like to ask, don't you have a Red Cross? You're not the one there doing it. When I do humanitarian, when I do civilian evacuations, we bring in the World Food Program packages. I've done that before. I'm going to go green and fast.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You know, my friend Philip has a philosophy degree, Ignat's brother. Actually, we haven't talked in a long time. He talks about this narrative he doesn't like, that foreigners are saving Ukraine. You know, that all the foreigners doing civilian evacuation, not many of them last. They come for a week and it ain't for them. It's mostly Ukrainians. Me, another guy, Andre West from Germany, probably did it longer than any other foreigner. But these people, it's really sad. They just don't want to leave their home. Okay, so let's not be concerned about Red Crosses anymore, because I've only seen about 20 gunshot wounds in the war as a medic. Artillery and mortars don't care who you are.
Yeah.
It's just a fact, Willie.
Yeah, of course. And I know, because I look at more a standpoint of like armoured vehicles and stuff, and people believe that the armour's being taken out by ATGM. No, it's not. It's artillery, it's mortars, and it's mines. And I think you could correct me on this.
I think
the injuries are mines, and mines are just the most brutal fucking thing. It's mines. It's it's explosives left from like cluster munitions, which become basically a fucking landmine, basically, if not worse, because no one knows where they are, because they'll launch out of a grad. No one knows what the fuck they are now. And then it's artillery and mortars under that as well. And that is just horrific. The only thing I push back, not pushing back, I'm just
Sure.
doing what a host should do, ask, is if a green vehicle gets targeted, for instance, a green vehicle drives in and is driving out and then a drone hits and explodes, then social media will be humanitarians were then targeted. But there's this mindset of mine, and I'm not trying to judge on it here, but if you're wearing camo body armour and green vehicle and you get then targeted, well, I'm not trying to say you're asking for it, but I'm trying to say that if I was on the other end of that drone, I would have hit that vehicle too.
Sure.
And my question is more, does it matter? The pushback will be, yeah, but they'd still target you if you're in a white vehicle with a red cross on it too. So I don't know. I guess that's where
You
your
know
experience
Ukraine,
comes in.
Willie. Do you know what a Zhiguli is?
No.
You know the typical Lada, the square Lada?
yeah, the
How many
Zhiguli.
of those have you seen before?
A billion.
And how many Ukrainian boys, 4 of them in there with AK, have you seen them rocking around, driving?
A lot.
Exactly. You filmed in one of your videos the bridge. It's a very prominent bridge between Zarichne and Torske. Okay, it's this is some months ago. I've seen. Now let me tell you about that bridge. It was the first time one of the civilians died on me. He didn't die on me, but I didn't take him out some days before. He had like dementia. I didn't have time. I came back to Yampolivka and his house was burning. We got a woman in my Nissan Patrol. Green. It's Hospitalers. It's an army vehicle, right? And then we drove back to Torske and we went and got... They're funny, these civilians. It's like they want us to evacuate them, but they want to take their own cars. Why didn't you drive out yourself?
Yeah.
There was 4 vehicles total. We got one woman. We got them in their cars. So when we were coming out of Torske, the yellow school bus on the road to Kremenna Drive, then head west. That bridge... Now that bridge is pretty beat up, okay, because you've seen it. That's zeroed in. That's zeroed in by 120s, okay? It always has been. But I got 1 green vehicle and I got 3 civilian vehicles, okay? Then they decide to hit us, okay? It's not about a civilian vehicle. It's not about an army vehicle. It's 4 vehicles. It's pretty hard to hit one with mortars, but 4 of them, you're going to hit something. Thank God I was the lead vehicle. One of them, he had his windows blowing out. They were pretty shaken. But we got them to Limon. They're going to target it. It's the number of vehicles. It's not, I can't tell you how many situations I've been in where you drive 1, you don't get shot at. You're driving 2 or 3, machine gun comes, mortar comes. It's just a numbers game.
But then could there be an argument
Only my
of,
experience.
because of this, using civilian vehicles, using vehicles with crosses on them, that then that's creating this way of then we're targeting everything?
Maybe.
Could it be putting more people in the line of fire due to the use of non-military stuff?
I'm not a stupid man, but I don't think that far ahead. A lot of civilian pattern vehicles are painted green. A lot of them aren't, because I'll tell you about a commander in 53 Brigade. He's a mortar commander, and he's got a white Hyundai van, and we had a little joke about it. He said, "No, I can't take this to the front position," and he's like equivalent of a captain, right? And I was like, "You can do whatever you want." He says, "No, I've already blown up one. This is my wife's car.
Yeah.
If this one gets blown up, she's gonna kill me." His home's in Dnipro. That's only from Avdiivka, 3.5 hours away. He's got to drive something.
Yeah.
We don't have 3,500 Humvees to leave behind for the Taliban. I'm sorry. It's just we don't have it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's more about being pragmatic. I've taken a Vito. Vito's a good van out of Soledar once, and it was a 2-day job. I mean, this is in September, not Soledar of January.
Yeah.
And I was saying, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? A vehicle's worth a life in Ukraine. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
We fixed it up. That was for Philip to do his work. How many civilians has he got out with that? It's a different value of life.
Yeah. it's just interesting, I think, to talk on the specifics of that too, because I see a lot of people claiming the humanitarian status, of which I push back and go, you're not a humanitarian.
No.
I know multiple people, and because as the job I was doing there, I get bloody pawned out to whoever will take me to the front. I'll get in your car. I don't care if you're a soldier, you're a humanitarian, whatever.
But you accept that.
And I accept that risk, of course. Of course I accept that risk. And that's on me. And if I get targeted, though, I won't then turn around and go, I was a humanitarian. No, because I was rolling with that. But I see a lot of people who are, we're humanitarians, but they have a boot full of weapons. And I'm like, you're not a humanitarian. I don't care what cross you've got on, what you think of yourself. You've got an AK in the boot. You're doing this you're delivering drones. You're doing this. You are instantly not a humanitarian. You're a combatant at that point. And I think there's this idea of that protection that I'm like, no. Your status, your protections are gone at that point. And this is why I had a problem at the beginning with Ukraine putting up the posters about how to make a Molotov cocktail. How to do this, do that. Now, I get it. If you want to throw a Molotov at soldiers, go for your fucking life. But if you get shot at doing that, don't turn around and say I wasn't a combatant. You've lost that status. I know that.
Who's saying that?
Sorry?
Who is saying that though, Willie?
Well, I see a lot of the socials of this humanitarian was targeted. This was shot. And I'm like,
are they saying that? Are the people doing it?
There's a lot of people.
Or is this
there's a lot of people saying,
is this the overall hive mind on the internet?
Well, let's go with the overall hive mind.
Yeah.
But I think people need to realise this, that, well, not everyone you see being humanitarian, you need to know what the actual limits of this are too. And I'm not defending the targeting of anyone here. I think no one should be targeted. I think war is fucking a waste of everything. But from my experience there too, there was a lot of people who were also expecting a Red Cross to protect them, which, no. Also, half the time I didn't wear press badges because I'm like, is this going to actually fucking protect me? But if I don't have my press badge on and I get shot, no one should claim that I was fucking press either.
Of course.
So I think there's a bit of a pushback on that, at least from my side, is, hey, if you're a humanitarian, and I'm not saying about yourself, I'm saying if you're a humanitarian, be a fucking humanitarian. And if you're not being one and you get targeted, don't then be like, oh, no, I was a humanitarian. But 30 seconds ago, I was delivering weapons to the soldiers. You know, I think there needs to be a more clear distinction in this, and we need to apply that over both sides. If Bogdan delivered soldiers to, the Russians, and then it got targeted on the way out, 100% we'd be like, that's a fucking legit target. I agree with that in every law.
Ambulances are a high priority.
Yeah.
They're a high priority target for them. We all know this. It saps our morale. You lose a medic, quite often, I'm going to say about 30% of the time, there's a woman there too. What does that do to our morale?
Yeah.
I can't make any claims about what we do to them because I don't know. And I respect you trying to offer a rather balanced point of view. Donbass taxi, as I call it, was more or less invented in Lemonsky region.
Yeah.
Very pragmatic. The first day when we took Limon, I was in the city hall. I found the Russian drug supply, ketoprofen, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. I found about 10,000 ampules in there.
Shit.
Nobody wanted to try it. I had to find a dog. Sounds a bit sick, but it was a very good drug supply and it wasn't going to be expired for about 8 months. I had to prove it on a dog first. You might say animal cruelty. I love my dog. Got to be pragmatic. I've been all the way up to Makivka, right to the edge, what we had. You know these places. One woman refuses to leave the town. She was a math and physics teacher. The most heroic people, in a sense, are the civilian activists who help get the people out. Okay? Kordumivka, south of Bakhmut. Anna, she was a nurse. When the local village elders fled first day of the war, everybody of that town was taken out by myself. Mozart Group, their leader's very controversial. I've met him before.
Yeah.
But the guys on the ground were good guys. They were out of a job. They couldn't train anybody on javelins anymore and stuff. They needed funding. They did civilian work. Everybody because of Anya, first of all and foremost, but then there was nobody left by the time that town was taken. That's a success story. You go all through Lemonsky region, this woman, this school teacher, she was tortured. You talk about Telegram. The soldiers were of Chechen origin. They thought that would make good Telegram content, them cutting up their back. Okay, the the de facto, they're not in Luhansk Oblast, the Luhansk prosecutor has that evidence, but she stays behind in that town to help try to get people out, to make sure that the humanitarian packages, World Food Program, that's where most of them come, those are distributed. You go into Tierney, when we were just taking Tierney, they were 500 meters up on the hill line. They weren't even in the tree line. They had some trenches. To go up that road, ignoting them, the army would back them up to come get people out of there, to come give them cover. That's pretty dicey. Some of the scariest civilian evacuation work is when there's not even a shot fired, because they're there. They're not shooting at all. Usually if it's going off even 500 meters away from you, it's not you.
Yeah.
But all through those towns, like I remember when we first went into Tierney, the soldiers in the dugouts, they could tell you where a babushka was with a broken leg, 7 houses down. They knew all this stuff.
Yeah.
Soldiers can be you can do a humanitarian action. I was giving people...
Of course, soldiers are massive.
The cops are asking us to do civilian evacuation because the police station's been blowing up now in Le Mans for quite some time. The chief of police, can you and Nika go do it? Because you got a paramedic. None of the civilian evacuation people can do that. They don't have paramedics. So we're doing a humanitarian action. Okay, when their dad died, the police had to come. We had to come. They were special police, child welfare police. We were doing humanitarian work in a war zone essentially, but we're combatants. It's all about being pragmatic. I give guys a lift all the time. Ask them on the side of the road. That's how I've made my friends.
Yeah.
Oh, do you need a lift? Do you need help with a change of tire? Towing people out? A medic, helping combatants. Yeah, I'll give you a lift down the road. Sure I will. They love it. Canadian guy, I speak my 20 words of Ukrainian. most of my words are Russian because people don't want to talk about that.
Yeah. It's the east of Ukraine.
Yeah,
everyone speaks Russian.
But also Google Translate works a hell of a lot better. A lot better English to Russian.
Yeah.
Don't tell someone in Kiev about that.
The thing is, you can guarantee that everyone in Ukraine speaks Russian. Not everyone speaks Ukrainian and Russian.
No.
Now the majority speak both.
Of course.
Everyone speaks Russian.
Pretty much, yeah.
And Cyrillic, of course, is better in Russian on the Google Translate.
For foreigners, just stick with Russian. It'll translate better. Try it in Ukrainian, doesn't.
Yeah.
Sure. Sto. But it's important we talk about those things. But who's a humanitarian? Who's a lot of the civilian evacuation workers? That's a humanitarian thing. Unarmed. A lot of them are helping with their military volunteers now. They help with 93 Brigade. They help with 46 Brigade, because for an influx of civilian evacuation work, there has to be a significant change in the line.
Yes,
that's how that works. When Lemonsky region opened up, that was going to be all new work, and only the Ukrainians could get in because of the pontoons at the time. You had to have access to the region, so it was only trusted Ukrainians. It wasn't foreigners being allowed in there at first. A lot of people can do a lot of things.
I've got a stupid question.
Sure.
Well, maybe there's no stupid questions, just stupid people, and I'll put myself in that category.
Go on.
Is there ever any thought of doing humanitarian work on the Russian side? Of if we're purely civilian, we are treating civilians, we are treating and moving civilians.
Yes.
And now we know that a lot of areas are occupied by Russian forces.
Yes.
Would there be benefit in, I know there'd be benefit because civilians, should be treated as civilians everywhere. But having some deal with the DPR, LPR, like occupied regions or other regions, in going and doing work. Now, of course, even if this is impossible, it's something I'm willing to take on board. But there's civilians behind those lines too, because you want to talk about the civilians in the most hardship in this war.
Yes.
Are not the civilians caught in the Ukrainian line. They're the civilians that are caught behind the Russian line. Like, if you're living in an area like, I was in Kharkiv, for example, when the Russian line was, you could fucking see it, and the civilians here, but then with the civilians on the other side too, and you're like, well, who's supporting them? Would there be anything worth in that? Is that?
Do the Russians have civilian volunteers aiding the army and aiding in a humanitarian for civilians? Can we?
I don't know. I'm saying, would an organisation like yours have, or that you are
in my battalion?
Part of, would there be benefit in that of civilian? Because I know people go like stuck in the Red Cross for giving aid in Russia. And you're like, well, no, that's what the Red Cross is meant to be. The Red Cross is meant to be no political bias, that it helps no matter who you are. Would there be benefit for those civilians? Because they're still Ukrainians. If you're in Donetsk, if you're in northeast Kiev, if you're in Zaporizhzhia Oblast, they're still Ukrainian people.
Yes.
They're behind the line. Would there be benefit in some of these organisations working there?
Well, I don't know how that would work. How would you cross the line? I'm not speaking about my own experience, only from people I know. So I won't talk about what I don't know unless it's someone I know and trust.
Yeah.
You would know better than me. There was a bridge crossing in Kharkiv, and I think it was like every Monday or something they allowed people to cross the line.
Yeah.
I don't know much about that, okay? I do know in Zaporizhzhia Oblast as well. I think that's where the prisoner exchanges happen because the line's so much wider.
Yeah, there's a green route there too.
Yeah, and I know you got to drive pretty fast. I know a Canadian guy, the one who housed us that time, he was actually imprisoned by the Russians and then set free. How do you help them? I don't know how you would even cross over. What I do know, in Lemonsky region, it was very interesting when we took it back. I cut off a woman's cast in Le Mans. That was a smelly cast. That had been there a long time. She claimed to have it on there for about 3-4 months. That's quite a long time to have a cast on your arm. Those were Russian medics who did that for her. Okay, were they army? Were they civilian? I don't know. Okay, I cut it off. We cleaned her up. Okay, it gets pretty nasty under there, you know. So try to clean her up with a bit of betadine. Oh yeah, and then just wrapped her again with a soft bandage just to be mindful, checking her motion. But that'd been on there 3-4 months. Okay, so they treated her the first time. By Western standards, by I hope Ukrainian standards, that would not cut it afterwards. But she was given initial care. Okay, another one that was really curious for us was the aid packages. Because there is Russian aid packages for the civilians. They're a smaller box than ours. Like we were, because we take pride over. You know, I'm on the Ukrainian side. I am not neutral in this. They were smaller. I don't know what was in it. It was consumed. They all had the Z on it with the Georgian ribbon, with the orange and black ribbon, and they had a Donetsk People's Republic newspaper in them. Because I seen one like, when did we take Le Mans? That was September. Yeah. So like that was dated April. The paper. You know, so it's like Rice Christians. I've not delivered a Ukrainian food package. We deliver Ukrainian bread. It's all baked in Dnipro. Like, you know, if you got the right connections, you can get 2,000 loaves of bread. You know, I've done that. But the boxes we have are World Food Program. Less and less World Central Kitchen. I don't see that. I haven't.
Well, I should say I think World Central Kitchen has made a big shift to Syria, Turkey.
Okay.
As well, because I did a little bit with World Food Kitchen in Kramatorsk.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, and I know they had a big emphasis on on Turkey and Syria too.
So I can only tell you what I've seen. So I have seen Russian food aid packages, but we've often talked like, do the Russians have volunteers like us? Do you know what I mean? Like, because I'm in hospitallers, I'm in a medical battalion, but because of my fundraising work I've done, I've kind of got to do a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't be allowed to do. Yeah, I'm a breadwinner, so I've worked with a lot of civilian volunteers, and from Dmitry to Ignat to Olya, they all wonder, do the Russians have people like us? You know what I mean? That are here in Donbass, helping the army, helping the civilians, helping with anything. I don't know. I would think they'd have less, because Ukraine definitely has foreign volunteers. Do they have foreign volunteers going there to help them? Oh, there's probably a few.
But that's double-edged too, because the first edge is, would the Russian side let you do that? Like if I just said right now, I want to go and help.
You're flying to Russia via Turkey.
I go to Dubai, and then I go through Turkey and land in Moscow. And my goal is I want to go and do medical work on civilians within Ukrainian border, but in occupied territory. The first one would be, would I be allowed to do that? Now, I applied. People know this, and people got a lot of shit. I applied for a DPR press accreditation as well, because I'm like, I'm non-biased. I'll go film it if I think you're full of shit. Because what I was going to do
is this during the current war or after full-scale invasion?
Through this current war, because I was like, I don't know what's going on in Donetsk. My plan was I was going to go film everything.
Neither do we.
And then leave, and then tell you what I saw, because I wouldn't edit and like put it online while I was there because of the the threat of.
Yeah.
But the first point is that
you're not scared to do that though in Ukraine, are you? Like your Swampy interview, your Rugi interviews, things like that I've seen.
There are things I wouldn't say and talk about as well.
Sure.
And there has been limitations of media, absolutely. The Ukrainian misinformation had to go at me for things that I believe that I could back up truthfully as well. So Ukraine and Russia are both not very free countries of press. The Freedom of Press Index, both are fairly low. And I'm a big believer in freedom of press. Now, one country won't let me film at all. One will let me film and it credits me. So I'll say that off the bat.
Okay.
Ukraine is more free than Russia to film. Are there certain things that people absolutely do not film and do not publish? Absolutely. Have there been people film and publish things and be kicked out of the country or their press accreditations be withdrawn? Fucking absolutely. So, yeah, that's part of it. But I get where you're going, but yeah, nowhere near as free.
I've had to take down some content.
Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is, that's the first prong, is would I be allowed to do it? The second one is, how would people see that? That if you were just on behind the line, because you'd have to make some exceptions, people would just go, well, then you're sympathising with Russia.
Yes.
When you treat, and I think this is one of the things, is this mindset of anything behind that border, you can't do. And I'm like, no. That's where it's probably most needed. Is there's so many civilian organisations, actually not so many. There's a lot who are doing fuck all. There's a few like yourself who are doing a lot, and you know way more than I. When I was in Kramatorsk, I saw a few other aid things, because we were delivering food and stuff as well, because journalists go to those areas. So we're going to Bakhmut, places like this, and deliver some food, some bandages if we saw an ambulance. The best thing I saw was actually I took a lady to do chemotherapy. So she's in Kramatorsk, and of course I have the relationship to cancer as well, and chemotherapy. And I've actually got an interview with her on my story of her in the back of the car, because her son was fighting in the war, and we took her to the next town to do her chemo and then brought her back. And very sympathetic, because I know how you fucking feel after doing that, and it's horrific. But where a lot of people need is behind that line, and I don't see any agencies going, hey, we're going to go make a deal with the fucking Kremlin. We're going to might have to do some, fucking power payoff or whatever, but we're going to help the Ukrainians who are stuck behind the occupied territory.
Those people, like Lemonska region, I know a lot about it. They were in bad shape when we got there. Yeah. They were in really bad shape.
I went to a place in Kiev that was just, we weren't meant to be there. I don't think, that's what our fixer said anyway. And it was just liberated, still a lot of dead bodies on the ground. And there was a basement from a school full of people as well, who were in bad shape, sick, injuries, limited food, limited water, shocking. Yeah.
It's so bad. I think my last day in East Bakhmut was about 14th of January, and I seen a woman. She looked like a crazy old cat lady. I would have seen her in October, when you could still drive up to that point. Only track vehicles were making it there. Yeah. We were at the top of the hill. You know where the road splits going up, the dual, top end, the yellow school, down in the basement, about 300-400 meters away. There's the Russians. She didn't want to leave. What's her life like now? It's rubble. Yeah. It's ruined. There's nothing there. I don't think about that much, but we're on the topic. I feel for those people.
Same.
I do believe those that are on the Ukrainian side are in an infinitely better position.
Yeah, but that's my case I brought up about, would there be able to support on that side?
I don't know.
Yeah, I know I've probably dragged this on.
I know where the Russian BMP is, you know what I mean? And I know what a French optic is capable of on a T-72. I just alter my evac route. Yeah. You know more about this than me. Artur Rahe, Jake Bro, Starsky, Georgies, I went to visit him in Denmark. Beautiful man. You guys know more about this shit than me. You really would. Do you know what I watch on YouTube? I don't watch any of you guys, no offense. I don't even watch my own stuff. Yeah. I watch what I used to watch when I do, because that's so it's too much for me to process.
Yeah. How are you dealing with that? How are you going with this?
I have a cognitive decline. I drove over 2 anti-personnel mines in Soledar in August. I lost most of my hearing in my right ear, blast lung. I don't have the stamina I used to, and my short-term memory isn't as good. Now, how do I deal with all this? I had to leave Ukraine to resolve a personal matter. I'm a resident of Sweden, but not a citizen. So this has caused a big problem in the war. I hope that will be resolved in the next few weeks. Since I've been away, this is probably my 40th, 50th engagement. I'm doing my job right now. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted on a level that, because I have to make appointments. You're the easiest guy to deal with because we never settled on the time to do this till about 4 hours ago. We knew it was going to happen. Yeah. But do you know the people want to have meetings about meetings and they want to bring in somebody else to consult from this department, or like Times Radio, they were pretty chilled. But other people, they want to plan like 3 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
I gotta get a fucking calendar on my phone, and I still haven't figured out how to work the app. I'm exhausted, and do you know what? I'm having nightmares. I'm having nightmares that Russia's fucking with my dog. When I hear an aircraft go overhead, there's a few fighter jets that fly around here, In Sweden, I had like a panic attack because of that. When a train goes by, like for 3-4 seconds, I got anxiety. Going back to my hometown, listen to my auntie talk about her childhood trauma. I grew up with my grandparents, her parents. I used to be able to handle that. I politely ask her to change the I'm squeezing my hands right now. I can't handle it anymore. The dead people, I zip them up. I said that to my father. I hadn't talked to him in years. I went home the other day. My auntie's still talking about her parents, the trauma. My father is. And I said to them, I wish you the peace of mind that the war gave me. Let the dead take care of themselves. Yeah, I'm on a different level now. But I'm still good. I've still got something to give, Willie.
Yeah, of course you do. Speaking on that, I think I actually got a message from a friend today, and he won't mind me sharing this because we're going to do an interview on this. He said to me, and this is dealing with a lot of death, he talks about throwing a grenade into a Russian trench yesterday, and one was killed and someone screaming. And I was talking about it, and he goes, I used to feel bad after. Now I feel nothing. It's weird. Probably because I've seen so many people that are being killed and all the bodies here. War is shit. I just hope that I'm normal after this.
Don't know.
And
don't know if anyone's normal. I struggle with it, and people mean well. We've got so many people supporting us, and people write me these messages all the time, and I don't have the mental capacity for it anymore. Like, I've asked them kindly, please write in point form. Don't tell me that your heart bled since February 24th. I know. I don't know how he is, how any of us are. I went back to England. I lived many, many years. I did very successful in the media tour. People have been so supportive, like yourself, YouTubers. A guy that I know, I don't know him well, but a good guy. He wants to go out and eat with me and my old boxing coach. Why does he want to go out and eat with us? Because he wants to go out with the war hero. Do you know what I mean? I ain't no hero. Heroim Slava means glory to the dead. I don't want to be a hero. And he wants to go out and he wants to eat with us. He wants to get a selfie with the three of us. And I want to hang out with my boxing coach. I want to talk about boxing, how the new amateurs who are coming up. I want to talk about our lives. And Stuart wants to come with us. And I knew what he was like. But we're at a Toby carvery in England, which that's all I want to eat. Like serve yourself. Like a roast dinner. Yeah. And he said, "What's the most gruesome thing you've seen in the war?" Oh my fuck, Stuart! I do this with you. You've never asked me any of this stuff, but it's my job. It's like they want me to be their dancing bear. Do you know what I mean? People in Sweden, some of them recognize me on the street. Some of them, oh, I'd love to buy you lunch. You deserve that. And where would you buy me lunch? Close to my work, of course, so I don't have to put myself out, so they can hear something that maybe they don't hear online. I should charge them €100 and buy my own coffee.
You should.
Do you know what?
You should donate it.
I should. I raise a lot of money for our battalion and everyone else. And do you know what? People don't mind how I'm living here. I just try to live more chicken, less steak. But I hope we have steak tonight because we're in Texas.
Place to have it.
Yeah. I struggle with that. And some of the best people... Do you know I'd rather be around guys like Samurai from Odessa? Doesn't speak a word of English. He just said to me, "Nah, we bliet." You know what I mean? But I love that guy. I'll find more comfort with people like him and Vova and Dima than I will around my own here. But they are my own. It's weird. It's really fucking weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, bro. It is what it is. Maybe I'm not even his type, you know what I mean? Because I wasn't there with them. I don't know what they know. He doesn't know what I know. I don't know what you know, Willie. Anyway, it's different. But I'm just trying to be humble about it and be cool. I find since I've been away, the best thing for me, I was always this way. I'm interested in other people. You know, I want to know what's happened in your life over the past year or two. Of course, I got to talk a bit of Ukraine with them because it's they don't even know how to. My friends don't even know how to approach it. Carl's like, "Are you back? Are you okay? Are you okay?" Yeah, Carl, I'm fine. You know, can we go get a fucking pizza and watch Goodfellas like we used to? Couldn't do it for 2 hours. He couldn't get over the Ukraine hump. I don't even know if I want to see him next time I have a chance. Yeah. I'm okay, Willie.
I'm glad. Are there elements about you though who you're a better man now than you were before going through so much?
Yes, very much so. I grew up quite neurotic. My mother killed herself. Her father killed himself. So I'm the last man standing. I grew up with an alcoholic grandmother in a small town. I was that kid whose mum killed herself. That's not nice. I only knew that as an adult, as I could process that. I never really fit the mold anywhere, but I desperately wanted to, especially the younger and younger I was. It's very validating for me, because I got into a lot of trouble when I was younger. It's not the 70,000 followers on YouTube or the people that, oh, you're doing amazing things, and the people who trust me like with donations. It's the people that I knew my whole life, that because I wanted to fit in, that I would have given my shirt off my back to help them, and people don't reciprocate to that because they don't want to let people in, you know, their boundaries, especially in Anglo culture. Ukraine Latinos are a bit warmer, but it's like everybody that ever knew me, they're like, oh, he really wouldn't have left you in the bind. He really would have given you the shirt off his back. And I kind of like that, because a lot of people that know me from England, from home, now they know my story. So it's like I can finally, like, that's kind of fulfilling, like I'm a good guy and everyone knows I'm a good guy. So maybe if somebody ever needed help, they would get over themselves and they would ask. I hope that makes sense. But it the outside stuff, like what we're doing here, that doesn't matter. But on the level of everyone who was there before, I hope they know I'm a good guy. That makes me feel good. Yeah.
I'm sure, I'm positive they know you're a good guy. If you had a new outlook on, I guess life and death, because I think there's something about, and I'm speaking to my own here, something about the closeness of death that is very liberating as well, of this idea of, well, does it really matter? I think, like myself, you know, the fear of death and is constantly there, but the more I've been exposed to that, the more I maybe become comfortable with that as well. And not only comfortable with it, but having this lease on, I need to really live my life too. I need to get out and do shit because that person had that robbed from them as well.
Yeah. I believe now that not all lives are equal. And I believe that there's good and bad deaths. So, for example, some people who would say, oh, he's such a brave guy, but he's crazy. Well, you can't see as far as I can see. You haven't seen what I've seen. You don't know what I know. If there was a burning building here in Texas, and there was children, a woman upstairs, how many people in that crowd would take a chance to go in there and try to help? It's like I said before, now I know it's like I have permission to be a good guy now to myself, you know? I know I'm one of them who go with it. Most people wouldn't. But if you've seen that happen, you wouldn't call them crazy, would you? If you were there. So there's a lot of things we've done. Some of them didn't make sense, but a lot of them did. You know, like I hit 2 Russian anti-personnel mines. That whole week in Soledar was one of my more scary times of the war. But you know, before I got blown up there, we got 4 kids out. You know, I was scared to do I was terrified, and I wouldn't have done it alone, but I went with Ukrainians. I said, well, I'm not going to let them go alone. But we got 4 kids out. You know what I mean? A babushka, the mother, the father. There was 2 other people. In terms of war effort, you know, that I could go out that day and I could be a hero, but that was a good death. That's a good death. But you don't know about that till after the fact. You just do the best you can. It's like it's like the guy who just fumbled his way past the 22 to the goal line. You know, you didn't know what it was till it was over. Yeah, so there's good and bad deaths, but I don't judge the value of every life the same. A grandmother, 70 years old, doesn't want to leave. Doesn't want to leave Bakhmut. Was that worth Pete Reed's life? No, not at all. Not at all. Maybe Pete didn't make that distinction. That's me, though.
Do you think that, like, sort of doing these actions you've done and saving people's lives has given internally almost yourself the ability to think like that, to think that you're happy with yourself? Do you think that before you'd done this, you were always a little bit like almost doubting yourself, and that doing this and doing things you've done has given you permission to, I guess in a way, love yourself and feel I am a good guy?
It's very gratifying personally, but I've always been a high functioner. I've lived a very interesting life. I'm not going to say that Ukraine isn't the most interesting time in my life. I use the word interesting. Ukrainians use the word interesting all the time. It usually means dangerous.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of things in my life that were equally interesting to a young man, you know. No, I don't think it'll completely fill the hole. I know about that in the 12 steps. Because that was yesterday. Today is today. I've got to go back. I've got friends who need my help. But if I'm so lucky to survive the war with all my faculties, I'm going to have to look at everything I've learned, Willie. Look at everything you've learned since this war. I'm a better person. Wouldn't it be a shame to waste that and just sit on my laurels?
Yeah.
Like that culture we were talking about here, where soldiers are held in esteem afterwards. Thank you for your service for the rest of your life. No, we got to keep going. It probably won't even be Ukraine for me. I always wanted to be an amateur boxing coach, because I've got a real talent with like people from 16 to 20 usually. Now I got to keep going. I'll drop dead work in at like 75. Yeah.
That's part of it, is that idea of continuing. When you stop is when things go to shit. Exactly.
Churchill had a hole in his soul. I read all those books about him. He was an arrogant, pompous prick, probably, but because his relationship with his father, Lord Randolph, was never there. He was just trying to fill that hole in the soul. He did pretty good for us in World War II.
Yeah.
And he didn't stop till
Oh, yeah.
1965. Going till he dropped dead, he was
Churchill
still doing stuff.
dragged a country through a war.
Yeah, but had a hole in his soul. It doesn't matter the motivations, but a good deed got done. And a few blunders. Sorry for Australia.
Hey, that was good. I always say the Brits sent their criminals to the most beautiful place on earth with some of the most natural resources on earth, and they stayed in a overcast, depressing shithole. You should have done the opposite.
Should have done the opposite.
In fucking hindsight being the foresight of arseholes, all the Brits should have gone to Australia and left the criminals in the overcast, cold, not the natural resource.
You come from paradise. Some of the happiest years of my life were in your country, in Melbourne. If it wasn't for Melbourne, I wouldn't have found the 12 steps. I wouldn't be clean to this day.
If you're happy and clean in Melbourne, you could be happy and clean fucking anywhere. I hate Melbourne.
Yeah. You don't know what you're talking about. You're from Adelaide.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah. You just stay your side of the Murray River, all right?
Exactly. So, after talking, maybe we should have done that bit, talking about health and mental health and emotional health after this. But can you run us through some of the situations you've been in that really have left a mark and what that looked like, whether it was saving someone, losing someone from there?
I'll try to do it chronologically. My first month was in a hospital, closest hospital to the Russians on the Zaporizhia line, and I learned so much there. See, medical, and I was shocked, but it makes sense mathematically, because if the war was like what I thought it was like, what a lot of people on the internet seem to think it's like, we'd all be dead now. Russia too. Half the world would be dead.
Can you expand on that? What do you mean?
Yeah, well, here's how it works from a medical point of view. Okay, the front line is the baseline. Okay, and maybe to a hospital, wherever you want to take it mentally in your head. Maybe it's Dnipro. Okay, but particularly for this one hospital I worked in, responsible for so much of the front line. That hospital, where they would stabilize them and send them to Zaporizhia or Dnipro, that's the point. So all along the front line, there'll be various medical assets, but the front can't be pumping everywhere all the time. It just can't. So maybe these guys over here, Hulapuli, they're getting rocked, but in between there in Poltavka, this is on the Zaporizhia line, it's quiet. And we're like, can't we go help them? Foreigner's guilt. Any foreigner who's good's got a hole in their soul. I don't want to name names, but some of them are characters and they're still there and they want to go help. You can't do that. And tactically you can't do that, because what happened? You have to stay where you are. And it always leads to the hospital. So therefore the hospital, you'll get to do the most work. It might not be first application of a tourniquet, but it can be pretty gruesome. Okay? So when I was there, that was actually my busiest time with the most casualties there and stabilization points. Those are makeshift hospitals. One time I seen, we had a busy night. We get no less than 20 guys a day there. And there was a man brought in between 70, 80 with his wife. He had a stroke. And we just put him in a corner and left him because we had too many casualties. So, you keep talking about your heart is with the civilian people who suffer on both sides. I don't cry too much over soldiers, but some of the civilians I've seen, we'd bring them in from the ambulance, bring them into the surgery room. It's a 20-minute, 30-minute max, stabilize them, Zaporizhia, wave after wave after wave. And that old man just got left in the corner to piss himself, and his wife's crying. And I just kind of looked at him for it seemed like eternity, could have been 2 seconds. And I was just like, sorry, mate. If it wasn't for this fucking war, we could help you. And he was just left to piss himself. And do you know about strokes? Like, that first hour is pretty important. His outcome was not going to be good. I remember a woman, she had half her hand blowing off, and I was assisting with surgeries in that first month, holding hemostats, everything. I learned quick. I learned really, really quick. It's actually quite simple, surprisingly. And between the vomit bag and her being conscious, all lidocained up, and the smell of the onion from the borscht, and looking at her crying, the doctor, who don't speak any English, he spoke English right then. He's like, "Are you going to be okay?" and that was the first time I got dizzy, and yeah, I'm gonna be okay. When I went down to do my front rotation, waiting in a house, waiting, can't go outside because the drones. That house was owned by a doctor who fled first day of the war. What good could he have done if he had stayed, I remember like 5 days waiting for nothing, and they come screaming to our house, medic, and I ain't even been in that long, but I'm already jaded. Dima's running out with epinephrine, adrenaline, and I'm like, don't even waste that on him. He was burned to a crisp. You could see his eyes; they were hollow through. The first guy that died on me, like we don't do compressions. That shit's in the movies. If you're doing CPR on some guy, if you're trying to resuscitate somebody before a hospital, I did that for 8 minutes. He had the decompression needle. Julia botched it, got it in his lung. It was just blood, just everyone. I was like, this ain't like Baywatch. And I was thinking to myself, that's weird that you would think about something. Like I'm having conversations with myself in my head, like, Brandon, what's wrong with you? The next day I was like a little menopausal woman, and we're all guilty because we were cleaning out the ambulance and the buckets of blood afterwards, and we were like singing like another one bites the dust. I was just happy that we got to stop at a supermarket. It's Europe. We got supermarkets. You can have an ice cream, and 30 minutes later you can be shot in the head. I was just happy going back down the road eating a chocolate ice cream. I think I'm sick. I don't now because I've heard that's the common experience of so many people. Working on stabilization during a battle in Zaporizhia with the remnants of Azov and 1st Armoured. Like, I just remember one day they dropped off. There's 3 dead guys. One would have been in his 50s, and his eyes were open. And it was a cold, crisp morning after the first day of the attack, because the first day is always the worst of an offensive. It's the fucking worst, like double the casualties. And I just look at their bodies. I'm out having a cigarette. He was terrified. You know what I mean? Just like. And it's like, what was he thinking his last second? I hope he died quick. Was he thinking like, where's my daughter? Where's my wife? That's the shit that goes through my head, like, Andrew Bagshaw. There's been others, but like, I could have helped him more. I raised a lot of money through my social media, and I used the civilian evacuation work to buy generators for army stabilization. Then I'm giving them to combat units. I've moved on to thermal scopes and night vision now and radios, but I had so much money. I would help other volunteers, get car repairs and stuff. I gave Andrew a bit of money, like a couple $100. He needed once like $1,000, and Ignat and I both feel so guilty about this because he's very well funded volunteer as well. And it's like he died a hero. Andy was always there, but because he was a nerdy little scientist and he wasn't like one of the boys like us, so many people disregarded him. I respected him, but in the back of my head, like, never would have picked him for the football team, and we could have helped him more. And he died. He saved over 500 people, it's civilian evacuation work. I'm pretty broken up about that shit. My friend Nico, we'll finish with, we came from Sweden together, and he was a good friend of mine, but he went home after like 4 or 5 months of the war, and I was like, it was an ego thing. I was like, oh, so you don't want to stay, you want to go back to your good life. I love the guy. When he came back to serve again, I was sick. I got diagnosed with Crohn's in November. I was in Kiev. I could have gone and seen him. He asked me twice to go for dinner with him, and I didn't. And my partner Nika, my paramedic working with me, I brought her to Pavlograd. She joined his team. They were evacuating a guy out of Soledar. Nika was the paramedic. Nico was up front with Dan. A BMP, because you got a blackout drive once you get down to Lower Bakhmut. You come out that hill on the highway, you come all the way down to where the train bridge is. A fucking BMP comes out of nowhere and they smash into it, and he died. And like, it was I seen him in Pavlograd, give him a hug, see him, but I could have gone out to have dinner with him more than twice when I was in Kiev, because I was sick, but I wasn't that sick that I couldn't go out, and I just so busy with my own shit. I could have done a lot better by a lot of people who are dead. Yeah, that's pretty. It's pretty shit, you know. Those are the things that bother me. I'm sure there's a few others if I get a resentment list going, but that's that stuff. I could have Andy Bagshaw the most. I could have done a lot better by him. I helped him, but not much. 500 civilians he got out. In army terms, that's a hell of a kill count. Yeah. So I did more for him in his death than I did when he was alive. Yeah, that's the stuff that I'm fucked up about. Tried to get his body out of Soledar. It was a spicy week in Soledar, and what did Wagner do to him? What did Wagner? I didn't see the bodies. Philip seen them in the morgue in Kiev, but what were his last thoughts? If he gets shot in the back of the head, and the news didn't report that because that only got made public like a couple months later. But they're already out of the news cycle. You know what I mean? Like, fuck you. Like Sky News and all that. No, they're not important anymore. They're pretty big news when they go missing and they're confirmed dead. But 2 months later, do you not think that people might like to know that how did he die? You know what I mean? Was he on his knees? Was he? Anyway, I'm gonna stop there with that. Yeah. That's the fucked up shit.
War is hell.
Yeah. But I'd rather be there with my friends in Donbass.
Yeah.
It's better. It's better.
There's a really good book. There's a couple of really good books by this guy, and he talks about it a lot. This guy, Dr. Dan Pronk, I'm not sure if you've heard of him.
No.
He was a full GP for the army, just a general practitioner. His brother, and this is all, none of this OPSEC, it's all public. His brother was an officer in command of the SAS, one of them.
All right.
And he didn't even know what the SAS really was. Went to a barbecue, and with these operators, was like, holy fuck, these guys are awesome, and became a doctor in the SAS, full doc. So not only was he a doctor, he was a shooter. And of course then that is a unbelievable skill set and got pawned out to all these other units. And some of the medicine he talks about, of frontline medicine, is insane.
Austere medicine.
But he also talks as well about sort of leaving the tribe and abandoning the tribe, and his feelings of not being on operation, being like, but what if I could have done something? I wasn't on this op and Jono died. I might have been able to save him. And I'll send you across some stuff because I think it might break it down for you. There's a really good book called Bad Medicine. It's about good medicine in bad places and talks a lot about this stuff. And you're right that the biggest thing is it's almost like not FOMO, not fear of missing out, but fear of not being there for you guys. And that's like one of my biggest fears in the world is one of my friends killing themselves, for example, and me not being there to help them. Like, you know, as far as not talk to them or whatever, or something like that. I think a lot of men in the stature of yourself have that you want to be there and helping.
It's better. It's better.
And even the horrific stuff. Look at World War I, World War II vets. They will say similar. Went through hell. And it was better. Ask any soldier. Not so the happiest time of their life was there with their mates doing real shit.
I've had 2 jobs in my life since Corona. I was self-employed since the army, the events industries, festivals, stuff. Different type of people. Don't mind working weekends, whether they have a family or not. People who will work 12, 14 hours a day. I thought everyone was like us. Corona shuts me down. I work in a place where everybody complains. 5 of us were working to get a better life. You know, I'm still employed. I got to be careful with the stone. I learned to be a stone worker with the Estonians, and I care about the customer satisfaction more than my own boss. No disrespect to him, but he just wants to keep his wife happy, his kids happy, and he doesn't want to have to do any more work than he has to. And that's the majority of the world. That's the majority of the world. Boys in Donbass, they're the ones who stop on the motorway to help you change your tire. You know, those are the ones that'll shovel the snow for your grandmother and not say nothing about it. They will help you change your tire, like in Mortar Alley. That's how I met my buddy Elf. You know, I helped him. And what does a Ukrainian always say? You've been there long enough. You need help? Normalno, normalno. That's the word. It's like everything's okay, and it's like it's not okay, mate. Yeah, I'm with those people. Yeah.
Well, you found yourself.
I know what I'm worth.
Well, you should.
I gotta go back soon, and so far I'm worth about 30 thermal scopes, 19, 25, 35 mil, and probably about another 5 NVGs. That's a hell of a haul.
Yeah.
Because I know how to talk, and I speak English. I talk good English.
Can you talk about some of the medical interventions that you've done? Maybe some of the stories of that.
Yeah. As boring as it sounds, the first one that I was actually really proud of was a reapplication of an ineffective tourniquet on stabilization. That was really, really cool because I could see a small pulsation of the blood, and as a foreigner from a non-medical background, telling the paramedics and the doctors, stop, you know, and fixing that guy. I don't know how much blood he lost, but he lived that day. I've had a lot of casualty transports. I would say most of them were stable. I remember, like, this is why I think I'm a fucked up person, yelling at a guy like he's my dog, like, no, go sit down. He had no arm. The tourniquet was good right here, but it was gone to about there. And I literally started yelling at him, like, stop, and I forced him down just so I could cut around the tourniquet, get around the clothing and everything, clean him up. Use a lot of peroxide there for those messy ones that are covered with dirt. Ukrainians like betadine, the brown stuff. I like peroxide when you can get it because it really foams all the shit out, you know, so it cleans it. Yeah, wrapped up a guy with no arm once like that. A lot of guys, just simple things like penetrative trauma. So I'm trying to show you, like, I lift my leg up there. Tourniquet's already been applied because I've never done first application of a tourniquet because I'm not in a trench. Yeah. They'd be dead if they didn't have it. Hemostatic gauze, wound packing. I've done things like a lot of the concussion meds. That's the most common wound in the war. Dexaketaprophene, dexamethasone, ondansetron, load them up, prepare the IV lines. If I didn't know, this is real simple stuff, but I was quite proud. Like, I know medics who haven't even thought about this. If you don't speak the language, just take a piece of tape and all the ampules, just tape it to his wrist, so then they know what meds they've already had. Like, how simple is that? You know. Mostly transports. Working in stabilization was really good. I found I had to push my way in because Ukrainians are very singular minded. Like, if they see you changing a tire, they're like, oh, you're a driver. But then I'm changing a bandage. Like, I've done a lot of bandages on civilians as well. A lot of them that come to our medical points when it's calm, you know, can you clean this wound? Can you help us with our heart medication? You know, that's beyond me. But I never gave an IV till the war, and in March in Avdiivka, an S300 hit. It hit. Thank God, it hit about less than 20 meters from our house. An S300. Why am I alive? Because the ground, it rained heavy and it hit into the soft soil, like it was tilled soil. 10 meters forward, it would have hit the hard concrete. But our wall collapsed. They killed our cats. But I wasn't feeling too clever. I never understand, why do Ukrainians wear Crocs and sandals everywhere? Like, you know what I mean? It's like they're shooting over there. I threw on a pair of sandals. I jumped out the window. I I had 2 guys, and I drugged them down to the root cellar, and then I got up searching for others because I didn't know what was going to come again. But I ran their IV lines, TXA, tranexamic acid. It's a blood clotter. It's the first time I've done IVs like under like red light, like broken glass, mud, screaming. And I've done them in vehicles, I've done them in ambulance, I've screwed up plenty of them, you know. Yeah, a lot of blood because I didn't occlude properly on the first guy, and it was an 18 gauge. It was like,
yeah,
but I ran all the lines and
just fishing.
yeah, the med point next house over, they ran down to the root cellar. By the time the doctors came up, they're like, what do they need? I was like, it's done. Everything's done. Do you know what I mean? They're like, but it's like, I don't come from a medical background, and I'm a foreigner, so I can't, you have to prove it to them. Unless they see it, they don't believe it. And I was like, everything's done. I was really proud of that.
You should be.
Because, yeah, that was my friend Max, his squad. And as much as I admire him and all, like, he was in the pocket of Pereskoivka. They were the last men out in the pocket. Like, February 2nd, 3rd or something like that, they were out of there. Can you imagine what that was like? They ate ice and snow, and they drug dead animals. They didn't shoot them down to the basement and cook them when they ran out of food down there. 116 stabilizes lines. Yeah, it's not your regular territorial unit. Yeah, he's been one of my best friends since. But the only reason I was so good with my IVs after that, after all the civilians died, I was done with civilian work after Andy and Chris bought it. And I was just sitting in Kostantinivka while Pete Reed and all them were dying. Like, oh, let's go bring... I don't want to disrespect the dead. But, oh, let's go bring food to civilians in Bakhmut. Let's go bring water. Because it's Bakhmut, 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 Bakhmut. We need to go to Bakhmut. Fuck Bakhmut. It's like... You got these educated German kids trying to bring water. There's more water in World Food Program boxes that are only going to be left for the Russians, and they're dying. I was just sitting in Kostantinivka for 6 weeks. I worked on a med point that was where soldiers would go for 3 to 10 days. Frostbite, corona. I was like a glorified taxi driver, bringing them to all the doctors and giving them their IVs. So it was a chill job. You know what I mean? I was like a nurse / taxi driver. I used to joke with those boys. They're like, you're a medic? And I said, no, it's okay, don't worry. I killed a few Ukrainians, but then they let me practice on Russian prisoners till I got good. Now I'm allowed to work on you guys again. Very dark humor. And they're like, I was like, no, it's going to be all right. Yeah, I was given like 10 IVs a day there, and I was studying, trying to get my ALS qualification. It's like below paramedic. Those are just, I don't know. I suppose I've done pretty good from where I've come from, but I'm gonna go do another course in Florida after this before I go back. I'm gonna do more. I'm gonna learn more about the tactical side of tactical medicine. No one's teaching that shit, you know. They teach March protocol, but do they not teach the tactical considerations of getting someone out of somewhere? You know, you got to get it. If he can't get a tourniquet on, if you think that's your personal choice, if you're willing to take a chance, but if you don't get a tourniquet on him, he's going to die. But I'll tell you what, after that tourniquet, you might want to drag him right another 10 meters to a more favorable position, and then put an MPA in up there. Okay, after that, maybe you might want to drag him down to a root cellar or further. So like doing the tactical medicine in phases, and that's why we're doing our rundown drills. I've done a lot of running today and a lot of shooting, covering, moving. I don't know how many units get taught that stuff, but like with people like Rebecca, people like my friends like Nika, I've been really privileged. I've been able to do some teaching as well. But yeah, I'm doing some of the teaching. I'm doing some of the work. It's pretty cool.
I'm really glad you're doing more of that. This isn't the acronym I'd normally use, but I think it's the main one people know is TCCC, as far as that tactical sort of combat medicine stuff. Yeah. That's so important, because the typical medicine, as far as like, you know, garrison medicine has no, well, it has of course place in the war, but not on the very front. You need that tactical medicine. And I often say some of the best stuff I did in my career was I did, of course, the whatever the first course is, which is basically first aid, and then part of that is then the like tactical consideration stuff, so that teacher will see. And then I did combat first aid, which is, a few week course of administering drugs and fluids and stuff. And then I did, before I deployed, I did AMT, which is advanced medical trauma. And that is the tactical, and what it is you're not really learning anything as far as clinical, but what you're doing is the full scenario. So from you're in the trench, you've got shot, well, someone's been shot, sorry. From there until they're with a doctor on a surgery table, it's that middle part. It's not the first bit, it's that, and the handing over to the nurse, handing over to the doctor, even handing over to a fully fledged paramedic, and working with both in military and civilian stuff too. And that is something that is very unrecognised as important, is that evacuation, the further stabilisation. We talked about this in the beginning with even just down to applying a space blanket properly, not having the space blanket blow away when a fucking helicopter lands, taping.
I don't know about helicopters. That's luxury.
No, that's a luxury, of course. But taping the ampules to them instead of, if you don't have casualty cards, down to that, and even terribly down to sort and sieve, which, what's the word people use? A triage. To, this person's not going to make it. Don't. If this person comes in, you sort of spoke about this earlier with the burn victim. Burn victims take up the most amount of resources.
And horrible. And the infections
horrible.
Afterwards, the thereafter, the stuff that I've only been told, I don't even know personally. Oh,
but the definition of mass casualty, which I'm sure the Ukrainians and your side is dealing with mass cas almost every day. If you have more casualties than resource available, and with that, sort and sieve is the first people are like, he's not going to make it, or he might make it, but we don't have enough. We could say 5 over here who have lost a limb, or we could save this one guy. But I'm sure you're more familiar with that than anyone. Or maybe not anyone, but a hell of a lot more than I.
I seen it. Yeah. Nobody died. Well, yeah, people died, but nobody died. Yeah, people died. I remember working, late December, January. I celebrated New Year's in Ivanivske, and that's all changed now. But running from Klishkivka to Chasiv Yar, and there was this berm. We were held up behind. The ambulance was gone. It was just us. And these guys were all just concussions. That's all they were. But we had no vehicles. We had no radio comms. And they were walking wounded. There was like 8-9 guys that had to walk out. And they weren't even sending an armoured asset down because there was a Russian tank. So we're behind the berm, chilling. I got 2 guys there. One of them's pretty bad. Run the drugs on both of them. I get them in and I crank the heat on the truck because we're on the good side of the berm. But then the other guys come eventually, and I had to triage them in the sense like we had another ambulance coming, but we didn't really have enough room for everybody. We're waiting for a third vehicle, and quite simply my triaging is like, yeah, you're fucked, you're okay, you're fucked, you guys get in. Not to be crude, but it's just that simple. That was the longest time I was kind of basically stuck there because those guys were not critical for 2 hours till whatever happened with the ambulances. I don't know, but that all opened up my head personally to more prolonged field care, because we want to ceftriaxone. It's a wide spectrum antibiotic. Soviet protocol is to intermuscular. Now they're telling me that's wrong, all the Western people. But anyway, administering antibiotics, I started looking, because I've had people with ocular injuries, I've had them lose their eyes before. So I'm wondering to myself, well, if I have prolonged care with him, you can learn all about this. Deployed Medicine, great app, Deployed Medicine. I started looking at ocular injuries on there. Then they're talking about antibiotics, wide spectrum, they're not effective for ocular injuries. So, but I've got all these resources on my social media. I've got doctors on my Instagram. I've got them on my if I really trust you, I'll let you onto my signal. I've got to separate because I'm a public figure. And I said, what drug can I use for this? What antibiotic? He's like, I don't know. I'll ask another doctor. All the answers are there. So now I'm carrying an ampule of levofloxacin, which is an antibiotic that's good for the eye. It's only that big, but it's in my bag now. So like I'm adding a lot of these things I haven't had to use, but because of other situations I've learned or seen, I've taken it upon myself to study those, like what to do in those situations. Not really. I just felt like talking about that. But I've seen things that have inspired me to learn other things. I wonder some things if they even teach it in medical school. You know what one of the best thing is for finding shrapnel? It's not an ultrasound, it's a magnet. Yeah. You know what I mean? They use like powerful car magnets. The doctors are using there. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Never would have thought of that before. I've seen that plenty of times.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine, I won't say his name, but he had to have an emergency stop button on the MRI. If you had an MRI, they give you the little thing and presser.
I've got a shoulder surgery, AC joint.
Yeah, my friend,
I loved it in there. I fell asleep.
Yeah, my friend had an MRI on something. I don't even know what it was, but he hadn't been in Afghan for like 10 years. And he was like, what the fuck is that on my knee? He's like, it feels like I was being stabbed, pressed the thing, and it was drawing out a bit of shrapnel.
Oi, oi, oi.
Yeah, and he had to go get removed.
See, I didn't know that. I didn't know that till in the war. Like, unless you go to Dnipro or somewhere, they don't stitch you up. You know, in those first hospitals, when you have penetrated trauma inside the body, imagine trying to take that out with limited resources.
Yeah, no way.
So if it's soft tissue, or even if it's in there deep into a muscle, quite often they leave it. And I only learned this at the further point of care. They leave it because the body has to decide, and it's like 50-50. The body accepts it, or it rejects it.
Yep.
I never even knew that till about 4 or 5 months ago. The body accepts it or rejects it. My friend Alex, he has a code name, Trevor Leahy. I shouldn't have outed him. He's got a piece of shrapnel he had taken out of his butt, you know, but I know the way he's like. He should have kept that in there, because every time he goes through an x-ray machine at an airport, he's got a cool story.
Yeah. Also talk about penetrating wound of the arse.
Yeah. Yes, sir, I got shot in the buttocks. $1 million wound. Forrest Gump.
Yeah. Have you done much work on Russian soldiers?
I haven't actually worked on them, but so we had 2 DPR prisoners in the Zaporizhia front, and they were little scrawny guys, and then we brought them to the hospital. Sorry, I didn't transport those guys. That's a lie. And what happened, it was a calm night, and I was coming in from a smoke, and then there was an armed guard outside of the surgery, so I popped in, and I was like, it's a Russian. Everybody was really curious. I don't know what was wrong with him. He had penetrative wound to his leg. I remember that for sure. But he looked scared shitless. And I remember people trying to say, like, afterwards, like, you see how scared he is? You know, that's why we're going to win this war, because we're not scared. This is Ukrainians, and this is getting translated to me. This is early in the war, like, this is April. And I was thinking to myself, I says, how much courage would I have if I was in a Russian hospital?
Oh, shit.
Yeah. That's the only difference, though. They're under an armed guard, and their whole stage of care. I don't know what happens in Dnipro or whatever, but like from our points, from stabilization to first hospital, but yeah, they get the same treatment. I honestly can't tell you. That's probably up to the individual doctor, but like if he's in a bad way and they can save him, you're stable, you're waiting. But I don't know how many Russian prisoners have been taken during the war. In January, was it December or January, in Chasiv Yar at stabilization, we took from Ivanivsky to Chasiv Yar a Wagner boy, and he smelled like a rat's arse. He had a beard down to here, and when he was brought to us, his hands were tied. It looked like just string, and he was blindfolded, and with a soldier. I think he was from 60. Yeah, he was from 60th Brigade. We drove him to Chasiv Yar, and everybody was gathered around to see him. You know, I even took a film of it. You know what I mean? He was all covered up. There was nothing identifying. But I think he was just a concussion because nobody told me. He seemed okay. But he had a multicam. He had a pretty new multicam uniform. And I was told by a man to take pictures of it, to take pictures of the seams, the labels. This is just my story about a Russian prisoner. And what this guy was, he used to be in the Legion. His name was Joe McDonald, but he was helping with this sanctions busting organization with lawyers, international lawyers. Apparently, the story was 100,000 multicam winter uniforms had been purchased from Turkey for the army of the Central African Republic. And I'm struggling to think of what winter's like in the Central African Republic. So that was a great interest to them. They wanted pictures of like the stitching, the labels, everything. I sent that off in a signal group. I never heard of that again. But that guy would have got transported further on. But everybody was so curious because it was winter. There was a lot of talk about, probably on your channel as well, what type of winter clothing, what type of winter boots. How's Russia going to fare the winter? How's Ukraine going to fare the winter? That would have been a big talk for you guys, because remember they were talking, if the ground freezes over, the Russian tanks can roll over. That was a big talk for us too. Yeah. But it was a very mild winter. A lot of rain, I think coldest day we ever had was -17, and it didn't last. But we all wanted to see, all the doctors, everybody, what's he got, what's he wearing? It was just pure curiosity. He was dehydrated, he was malnourished. He wouldn't have been 50 kilos. Small guy. That's all I know. All the other Russians I've seen are dead. And anyone who's ever shot at me, I didn't see him because it's a machine gun.
Yeah.
Small arms in Soledar at like maybe 200-300 a couple times. That's my experience with Russian. They turn green, if the weather's the right season.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah.
It's horrific.
Yeah, maybe that's why they called them
The little green men.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to use racial slurs or whatever here, but yeah. They turn green. Just like a mask too, like a Halloween mask.
Yeah, it's horrific.
And the fingernails still grow. God, look at me smiling. See, I'm weirdo.
Would you have any reservations working on a Russian?
Well, I never did any work on them.
No, but would you have any reservation doing it?
No. I remember and I never got to see the guy, but the doctor I work with outside of Avdiivka, we were on point one night, and he translated what's on the radio. Some of the Russians came to surrender to us, and apparently they had wounded. I guess they were just that much closer to our side. I don't know the implications of it. Did they intend to? But as far as I know, they got taken. Yeah, I would help them. He wouldn't be my priority though. Like in my triage, of course I would try to help the Ukrainian first, but no, I couldn't leave him alone. I wonder if they'd do the same for us. A lot of our men were killed in Avdiivka. My friend Oleg went to get the bodies. There was a position taken about, how the Avdiivka pocket, it's like a wine glass. So I suppose if you're looking down, it'd be that way. So that's like southwest. One of our positions got overrun. And I trust Oleg, so this is not me who did it, but he went down to take out the bodies. And when we took over that position again, there was a lot of bodies on the ground, Russian, Ukrainian, but some of the officers were missing, but then the men were hung in trees. There was like 15 of our guys, maybe 15, I don't know, I don't remember the number. Ukrainian soldiers were hung. So I don't know how it works. I mean, obviously you see the prisoner exchanges happen every now and then. I mean, look at Aiden, Cossack Gandhi, Pinner and all them. But I think there's a lot that they're not missing. They're marked down as missing. They're not coming home. I don't know.
What do you think of the casualty figures?
Ukraine doesn't really report them, do they?
Not really.
No, I don't, and I don't watch the news, so I'm like, I'm not your, maybe I'm your best person, maybe I'm your worst person, but I do know, and I know this through anecdotes, that we're killing more of them than they're killing of us, and that's the pure principle of Ukraine's defensive posture. I know nothing of this counteroffensive. I haven't watched the news. I don't look at deep state. I've been gone now. All my information is about 7 weeks old now. 7 weeks I've been away. But I know the pure principle of our defensive positions. When Russia comes forward, they have to pay. So I would think, unless we have some pretty good Western assets, the same would apply to us in the counteroffensive. We have to pay. I remember in Bakhmut, end of November, there was like early December, there was a failed offensive. I think just Bakhmut Hospital alone, the first day was about 180. And then it significantly dropped to less than 90 casualties. Not dead, casualties, wounded, to go to Bakhmut Hospital. So they were many of them would have been quite bad. See, it's hard to say what's a concussion, that's their numbers that ran through the day. Was it an amputation, a penetrative trauma? I don't know, but it was over 180. And one of the hospitaler medics, I was only there from the second day on. I knew her. She got dreadlocks. She said it was Armageddon. So to go from 180 to like 80, 90 to the next day down to like 60. See, that's how an offensive works. You better, the first day is the most important.
Yeah.
Yeah, you better make it count. It's like when you're fighting a big guy, you know what I mean? Like if the first crack don't count, you're like,
yeah.
I don't know, but I know it's not like that every day. It can't be like that every day because we'd be dead.
Yeah.
I know some days and positions I've worked, we don't have a 200 that day. We don't have one the next day. We don't 3 days later. I don't understand the war, Willie. It's so big. Anyone who does say they understand the war, like,
yeah, they don't.
Run.
What do you think is some common misconceptions about this conflict and what's going on?
That's too broad of a question. But if I read the comment warriors, when they say, look at Ukraine, they give us, like, these are, I think, Americans, we give them all this fancy stuff and they've reduced it to a trench warfare. Well, it's because of drones. You know, like everyone's like, OPSEC. Yeah, but that's true. But we know that they know that we know that they know. Yeah. Like electronic warfare assets negate each other. With drones, they know where our points are. We know where their points are. They draw us into complacency. Okay? And things that don't get hit, get hit. It doesn't matter who you are, you dig. It's because of drones. Now, if you dig a shell scrape, what happens with artillery and mortar? It hits and it goes slightly upward trajectory. Except for concussion, you're going to be pretty safe if you got a good hole. For the most part, please God. I mean, how often can a mortar round or an artillery shit through the eye of a needle?
Yeah.
It happens because they fire a lot.
And even then you have zigzag trench to get around that.
Yes. So this is one thing. It's like, it doesn't matter if you were territorial, if you were regular brigade, tanks dig. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, digging. If you don't dig, you die. Yep. So there's so many lessons we need to learn from the war on terror. Medicine was the greatest of evolution, I think, from the war on terror, I'm told. But at the same time, there's many things that don't apply. It's a frontline war. We know where they, like, you know, I can get sushi in Konstantinivka.
Yeah,
I can.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the Chubareki stand in Chasiv Yar is open anymore, but that was pretty good. I had a kebab in Chasiv Yar, in Bakhmut, right near where the old Bakhmut market was, end of September.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's we know, they know, we know. Don't ask me why that hospital in Bakhmut at the bottom of the hill never got hit. 5-6 ambulances got blown up over the month or two out there. So that's a big misconception. People say, like, the Ukrainians are stupid for digging trench. What else would you do? I don't know.
Well, look, Russia's dug in trenches for their defensive positions.
Everybody. That's going to be a real bastard to deal
we
with.
would do the fucking same.
Yeah. So what are the misconceptions? I don't know. I was there. I was there the whole time. I wasn't on the outside.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you brought up was, and you said it earlier, and I didn't want to butt in. There's been a video going very viral recently of people in Kiev eating McDonald's. People look at that over the war, and you're like, when I was working there earlier, when Kiev was like really getting hit hard, I remember being in Kiev, running around, shelling. You could hear gunfire, all this shit. And then 20, 30 minutes later, being in a bar with people, with guys meeting girls meeting guys, picking up, I'm having a fucking cocktail. 20, 30 minutes later. And that is such a weird thing to get used to, because you're like, what the fuck? And me and the guys, you can see, this is on one of my videos, we still have green tape on our arm. We still got fucking green tape on. And we're covered in shit. And we're like, what the fuck? But that is just what a major war looks like.
It's amazing. I used to drive Sasha. He's a doctor from Kiev. I used to drive him when I first rocked up in Kramatorsk. Lysychansk was over, so there was nothing, like, for 2 weeks. I used to drive him to Konstantinivka to get laid. You know, he had a girlfriend there, and I thought, well, that's me helping Ukraine.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, you know, that's crazy. Like, I remember rolling into Dnipro because I told you I stashed all my generators there, and I was playing the game towards January on. I was tired, so every 10 days I was getting a night in Dnipro at that hotel. But I used to like driving into Dnipro late at night, and I got the stare.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it like that, but I was thinking later. And they look at you when you go into Ate Bay at the supermarket, and I'm looking around like, ooh, look at the selection. Like, my eyes, like, almost like I'm drunk. Like, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna get that. It's like, what do I smell like? You know, my clothes are dirty, I'm dirty, my hair. I haven't showered in 8 days. But I used to get a kick out of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, the first night rolling in, you know, and I do my laundry in the shower there at the hotel. I didn't know they had a laundry service. But there's a divide. And a lot of Ukrainians only have access to the war through social media as well. And I reckon a lot of their families, if they're good men, they're not telling it to their families the way it is.
Yeah.
What would you tell them? Oh, Vova died today, Dima died, you know, his arm blew off, and you wouldn't tell them that, would you?
Of course
your children
not.
don't need to know that.
That's what we got back from World War I and II. Was, I'll fuck up this, but there's a military song from an Australian guy who's singing about World War II, and we call World War I ANZACs, Australian New Zealand Army Corps. Why didn't they tell us about this? Like, we only heard the stories of heroes. We didn't hear about, I wish I could remember the actual lyrics, but they didn't tell us about the blood and the guts. And the Anzac heroes never mentioned the blood, guts and tears or something, it says. And I think there's a lot of that. That's protecting people too. You don't want to, you really want your part. Like, even when I was there, I was doing nothing compared to those guys or yourself. And if my partner Lily asked me about things, oh no, whatever. And the biggest one I've been quiet on was when I was in Turkey and Syria. Because the amount of death, like the fucking sheer amount of the earthquake, was unfathomable. Tens of thousands.
Cholera.
Yeah, like just unbelievable. And of people, just a natural disaster. And you're like, and I'm not a religious guy, so this is just for me pure, like, luck, or just bad luck of that happening there. And just like, fuck. But yeah, getting used to that, and, you know, not sharing that with significant others and whatever is true. And the war has not come to a lot of people in Ukraine, like, especially like Lviv. Their access to the war, on the whole, is you and me, the same as through social media. Now, of course, they have one less degree of separation.
They've got the language, and they've got access to all the Telegram channels that most people would never find.
Yeah, but as far as shells dropping, there's not very many missiles actually hit near Lviv. Whatever. It's a very interesting part of the war, is that the people go, oh, look at this. They're not in war. What do you expect? No one in the world has enough troops to hit everywhere. Russia can't hit every town.
There's things I never thought about, just like anything in life, I never thought about till I've seen them, like Julia, Yulka, she's a nurse with 28 Brigade, and she's from Kharkiv. And I was, because I'm the foreigner, she don't even speak English, you know, but I love her, she loves me. She wants to introduce me to her kids on video chat. She ain't seen her kids now probably 10 months. You know, people don't think about that. No. She's only from Kharkiv. You know, Ukrainian army gets 10 days leave a year. Some of them don't even get their leave. You know, Alex's parents are in Dnipro. You know, when missiles hit Dnipro, you think he's not shitting himself? His wife and son are in Germany. You know, people don't think about stuff like that. You know, in Kiev, like, I don't know. Like, I worry about my friends there when things happen. But we just got to wave the flag and keep saying Slava Ukraine. No one says Slava Ukraine in Donbass. You hear it sometimes, but nobody's listening to Zelensky's speeches. You know, like, oh, did you like people, like if I said a bad word, I got nothing bad to say about Zelensky, but if I said a bad word about him to like a lot of people on my YouTube, how dare you? He means more to he's doing a great job for us. You know, he's the spokesman. You know what I mean? He's like MTAC's representative. You know what I mean? Like he's suited and booted, but he's done a great job for us. But do you think that in Burma, the boys in the monsoons were huddled around a radio to listen to Churchill's speeches? Yeah. It's two different wars.
A lot of Ukrainians despise Zelensky as well.
I've heard like the biggest one is, I think it's more of like an irony. It's like, you invested so much money in roads in the East before the war, particularly in the East. Like, I think he was trying to level up because a lot of people in Ukraine, like in the political side, is like, we need to win them over. He built all these roads. It's like, yeah, for Russian tanks to roll over us. I don't know much about the politics. Like, I'm a big boxing fan. You know, Lomachenko is not well liked. Do you know who that is either?
No,
okay,
sorry.
3-time gold medalist, lightweight super sensation. His father put him in ballet for 5 years, and pretty much nobody in the world can figure out his footwork.
Is he Ukrainian?
Yeah, he's Ukrainian. He's called the Matrix. I watched him fight Luke Campbell in London, Britain's best amateur we've ever had, fighting pros. Lomachenko is Russian Orthodox. Okay, so he you know, is like, oh, look at him in a Ukrainian uniform, but he said things, it's only been told to me, that are kind of on the fence. Usyk, for example, Alexander Usyk is heavyweight champion of the world. I didn't realize this, but his first fight before the war with AJ, when he took the title, he wasn't waving a Ukrainian flag like usual. Apparently it was a Crimean flag, like from his hometown, the flag. So that was considered controversial. A lot of celebrities support volunteers. So they use their fame, you know, like look at the Klitschko brothers. I mean, fair enough, Vitaly's the mayor of Kiev, but people look to them. And at the beginning of the war, there was a lot of celebrities, when it looked like Ukraine was gonna lose at the beginning, they didn't use their money and their fame to get behind the cause. And the way it's told to me, like my friend Slavik runs a repair service for tires, you know, that's all funded by this pop star guy who's like George Michael. He's like the Ukrainian version of George Michael. All the babushkas love him. Right. And basically, basically it got explained to me, like, he didn't support from like the first month on. He was like waiting to see what way it goes. So some of those celebrities are giving even more money now to the army causes to try to pay back for their sins. It's a funny old war, isn't it? Yeah. There's even a porn star who's absolutely, anyway, she's a great girl. Like, she's donated to the cause. She was Playmate of the Year 2014, Josephine Jackson. I've only ever looked at her Instagram account.
Sure.
Yeah, but no, she, like, so many people have a part to play in this war. So many people just want to go on about their life and ignore it too.
Yeah.
I reckon 20% of the population just want to, as long as they're okay.
Yeah, well, there's an argument in that I've heard as well about, like, in some regions, and a lot of people are going to jump in on saying this, but don't shoot the messenger. What real difference does it make to a lot of regions, if they're under a Ukrainian flag or a Russian flag? They just want to get on with their life. And people don't realise that some of these villages, The people just want to survive and live. And it's not like what a lot of people in the West are used to, that out in a lot of those villages is a battle for survival. And at that point on that, do they care where the map is drawn? No. Now, there, of course, there's a lot of pro-Ukrainian, pro-Russian people in those, but when is the juice not worth the squeeze of it? And that's going to become a very big question with these offensives coming up, and what is cleared, what isn't cleared, and where does it then lay? It's an interesting question of what is the change in these people's lives. And I've talked to some people before the conflict in those villages, right on the front line, and in Zlote, if you know that region, and them being like, I don't really give a shit if I'm not Russian, I'm not Ukrainian.
They just want their home.
I just want my home. And there's fucking there's shelling here. There's troops living in the building next to us, so we're going to get shelled. And there's a fight. We just want our home. And I think that's a fair enough argument from those simple little towns like that. And this is going to be the question asked if the counteroffensive doesn't clear everything, is do we? Because if you march through Donetsk, like the idea of clearing Donetsk, it's going to be a bloodbath, like that, and that's going to be the question that has to be asked: is what is the risk v reward on this? I'm not saying not to do it. No. I'm not saying I don't support it, but I'm saying at the end of the day, we need to look at too of what the overall thing is for the people.
Well, socioeconomics was a thing I talked about before.
But a lot of people are going to Russia for that too.
Well, I've heard stories of that. I've heard of a girl even from Dnipro who's moved to Russia, got offered a job. And Russia has this is a massive coup for Russia to get somebody. Okay, that's a great propaganda spin. Come all the way from Dnipro to Russia. Young girl. She's not so popular with her friends anymore.
I bet.
No. I came into this war, I didn't come in to fight. Okay? One thing handed up to another thing. Maybe I've done a good thing. But what I seen in Lomonsky region cemented it for me. The idea of, when the Soviet Union was around, I could buy a loaf of bread for 2 kopecks. You know, like that's a common narrative I've heard, you know what I mean, from people that like this is for the babushkas. You know, there's a big difference between the opinions of young and old people.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, if you talk to young people, more often than not, way more often than not, Ukraine. Old people, well, they're not talking to us about this, but the young people talk pro-Ukraine. In Lomonsky region, all the areas that we've liberated that were under occupation for 6 months plus, they talked about when Russia came, it was hell. Then it was calm. When Ukraine came back, it was hell again. Now, we're talking about the houses getting blown up, everything. But those people seem to be, and I'm only getting it translated to me, okay, overwhelmingly Ukrainian, pro-Ukrainian. In one village, a woman talked about, the Russians they were good to us. What do you mean? Well, they only killed 5 people. They shot my dog, but I was able to get one of the dead person's dogs. And she said to me, well, she didn't say to me, she said to Nika, I think one of the biggest factors that they were the way they were with us, because we are Donetsk Oblast, and we speak Russian. Because she said, we know what happened in Bucha. We know what happened in Irpin. So those people, I mean, if you shoot 5-6 people in their village out of 100 or 200 or 500 people, they're not going to like you. Mm. So if they were waiting for Russia, when they seen the reality was not kind to them. Those people in Lomonsky region seem overwhelmingly Ukrainian. What about all the young people from Donetsk Oblast, from Luhansk Oblast who've left since 2014? I met a beautiful girl in Kiev. She comes from Donetsk City, and she's not been back since 2014. She's an IT worker. There's no future for her there. I'm told there's countless stories like this, like a brain drain since 2014.
Yeah.
So the young people want Ukraine. The old people, probably a lot of them have a romance of the Soviet Union.
Yes.
And what's the media access? You know, because they're watching TV, they listen to radio. Young people have options. So the future is Ukraine.
Yeah, this
Russia and the Soviet Union is the past.
There's this. The term I'll use is actually from. It was either Friends, but I think it's How I Met Your Mother. Is graduation goggles. That you look back at things in your past as better than they were. Like school camp, fucking sucked.
Sucks.
But after it, you're like, that was awesome. That was the best thing ever. Graduation goggles. You look back on things as better. And people have this, as you stated, the romanticism of the Soviet Union. And the most scary fact I see in this is not only those, like if you're a babushka who's 80, romanticising about the Soviet Union, I get it, because I get, well, you lived the first 40, 50 years of your life. Within that, you were younger, you were, well, you know, doing things. You look back on your 20s and 30s as happier than your 70s.
Of course.
So you see, so I can
arthritis
understand the reason for, and depending where they were. So if you were in, say, Kramatorsk, Soviet Union, probably pretty good because the big mine. Other areas fucking sucked. To my understanding, Kramatorsk was a guarded off city because it was very rich. Same with Pripyat around Chernobyl. Very, very good place. Was a good place to live until, you know.
Yeah, until something happened.
But you can see why they romanticise the Soviet Union.
Of course.
The scariest part is actually what I see, and I won't go into this, I won't tangent this here, but is people in the West romanticises the Soviet Union. And I'm like, if you romanticise that, you're romanticising Leninism, Marxism, things like this, you're either an idiot or both, and you don't understand the history and the tens of millions of people that died under that system. Like, fuck off. Like, you see people wearing a hammer and sickle shirt. Do you have
any idea?
Do you have any idea?
Any
that
idea?
That more people have died due to that system
than under a swastika.
Wearing a swastika. And I think that is dangerous. But I draw that just as a thing.
I think Chairman Mao gave him a run for his money.
Yeah, there was a competition there, I think. But communism as a whole. Yeah.
But look at YouTube. How many views do Soviet videos get? How many videos have you watched about the Trans-Siberian Railway, about the Soviet Union, about Baldwin bankrupt? Look at me on a Soviet train.
Yeah.
People are really interested in this Iron Curtain. I was fascinated by it as a child.
Yeah.
Fascinated. I can tell you so many things about Russian history. It's a history of slaves.
Yeah.
No, a Cossack, why did he move east? Why did he move south? To avoid taxation by Polish Lithuania. Does that not sound like taxation without representation? Like, where are we right now in America?
Yeah.
Peter the Great tried to start reforms, kind reforms. They kicked him out. Yeah. Tsar Nicholas, when he realized his show was over, he tried to start liberal reforms. Well, we know what happened to them. They shot them. Khrushchev, de-Stalinizing. They kicked him out.
Yeah.
And then, what was it, Gorbachev started Glasnost, Perestroika, liberalization. They kicked him out, and they bring back the old flag. So
maybe we should read the Gulag Archipelago.
Oh my God, Solzhenitsyn, that's just so depressing. I've been through all three volumes of it, audiobook, because I wasn't.
Well, and the thing is, two people. One of my biggest things I'm interested in at the moment, actually, is listening to defected KGB spies. It's my favourite thing to listen to at the moment on podcast, because there's a few of them who were defected out of the KGB, and it's really interesting because the KGB got the most nationalistic, most pro-communist people. Like, that's what they're looking for, was that fully drank the Kool-Aid guys. And then the one I'm listening to at the moment, only halfway through, with Lex Friedman as well, actually, is he was like, I moved to America and started realising things about capitalism, and then eventually defected. But it's really interesting seeing someone up for the first 40 years of their life that drank the Kool-Aid and then realising, like, whoa, holy shit, especially if they're in the KGB. But them speaking to, now they can speak openly. KGB is not a thing. The FSBs rose out of the ashes, but so did the SBU, as that all broke up. But speaking of their complete, not questioning it, and then questionable actions, and then seeing the other side, and it's really, really interesting for those who want to look behind the curtain. But people are romanticising this in the way of, no, look at the death, the destruction, everything. This was not a good time in the world.
It's horrible.
I forgot the numbers that communism had killed, but it's over 100 million.
People who cannot have children.
Yeah.
Who have children. What would the population be of Russia today had the Bolsheviks never come into power? I couldn't imagine. Would they have 300 million people?
Russia,
400 million
geographically, and their resources, the location, they should be the most powerful country on earth.
But they're not.
But they're not, because of these reasons, of course. But, sorry, we went a tangent, but that's, people romanticise this, and it's fucking scary. I'm like, whoa, capitalism isn't, it's the best we've got, but flawed as well. Everything's fucking flawed. But, Jesus Christ, it's not worse than that. Christ, it's a bit ridiculous, but...
I'm 37 years old, Willie. Most of my friends in Ukraine, in reality, are younger than me. If Ukraine doesn't get a future of freedom, then it was worth nothing.
Yeah.
For the people. I want full territorial restoration. That's me. But that's not for me to determine. But what I want for them in my heart, I want for them to have schools. I want them to have hospitals. I want them to have bloody roads like us.
Yeah.
The youth deserve better, and they deserve a chance. I have nothing but love and admiration for all my friends, but if they can't give themselves, if we can't give them a better alternative, then what's it worth?
Yeah.
What's it worth? In my battalion, there's so many inspirational people. It's a medical battalion. People, the most unlikely heroes that you would ever have seen before. We have veterinarians who are medics now. They're very good.
Yeah, I bet.
They're people who want better.
Yeah.
And they want better. This is a messed up thing. I know a Ukrainian girl who's helped a lot, a volunteer. She's lived in Germany for some years. She raises money for drones. A lot of things. Those drones go to the Kherson front. Her mother's in Crimea. Her mother's in Crimea.
Yeah, I know.
And she's fundraising for drones to go to Kherson brigades. Think about that.
Yeah.
She wants her mother to leave so damn bad. She says, I'll fly you to Georgia. I'll come to Georgia to get you. You can live in Georgia. They speak Russian. You love it there. You loved Georgia. She loves Georgia. Everyone loves Georgia. I love Georgians. She's pleaded with her mother many times, and her mother's like, if I die, I die.
Yeah.
It's pretty fucked
There's
up.
a lot of that, yeah.
But she's still fundraising for...
Yeah.
That's a mother and daughter.
Yeah. Ukraine is going to have there's going to be multiple stages, but two big parts of this war. Is going to be the offensives and where that lays. And at the end of that will be, hopefully, peace. That of course, is wherever it ends up. If it ends up at the internationally recognised borders, fantastic. But we don't know which way the offensive will go. But then the stage for Ukraine following this is going to be the rebuild, which is going to be insanely hard, because Ukraine itself will have a huge brain drain. A lot of people this was the whole idea behind the Ukraine Bride thing, but it was a real thing. People wanted to leave. And people that can afford, men have to stay in Ukraine. But if you're rich enough, you can leave. The women have left. And if you're a woman who's left Ukraine with your kids or whatever, and your husband has died in the war, why would you go back? And this is going to be a real problem. This is where this needs to be done very cleverly by things like the EU. There needs to be incentive and future stuff. There needs to be, this factory gets built there, things like this too, because Ukraine already had before the war, and I dare say it's got significantly worse, a really poor replacement rate really poor, of children. And Russia's is horrific too. Russia's replacement rate is actually worse than Ukraine, with a very ageing population too. And then you look at these other countries, South Korea, Japan, horrific too. But that is going to be the big one for Ukraine. And what I hope for Ukraine, they don't get dicked on. And I'm still, people, some said to me the other day, you don't seem to trust any government or any agencies. I'm like, no, because I think you're wrong to at least question it. What I hope Ukraine don't get dicked on is these somewhat promises of EU NATO membership. What I hope doesn't happen is Ukraine do the battle of the lifetime, the battle of the century, to retake their positions. And then the EU turn around and go, oh, well, because of your financial position or your security position or this or that, you're not yet in the position to join the EU. And that's going to be fucked if that then happens. But that's just speculation from myself. But yeah, Ukraine was doing so well for themselves. They had a lot of issues. Like before this war, had shitloads of issues. But speaking to my friends, they're like, yeah, but we were fixing it. Corruption still is a huge issue, of course. But they were saying, yeah, but we were getting there. We were getting better. We'd only been independent from the Soviet Union for 30 years. We couldn't turn all that around that quickly.
52 million people, 1990.
Yeah.
What are we at now? 36, 35?
36. And we've had, 11, 12 million leave? 7 or 8, maybe it's 7 or 8 million have left. Maybe it was 11, 12 total, but some have come back. Big issues, big uphill issues, and these need to be thought about at that top end very thoughtfully and in the way of this, because it needs to be incentive for people to go back. If I was a female and had left the country, and this is a whole other point of we live in the world of equality and equity and this bullshit. No one who waves a feminism banner or whatever has said shit about 1 million men being sent to the front line and 10 million women crossing across the border for, whatever. Anyway.
And we've got some good women there in Donbass too.
Of course, absolutely. And I'll never take that away. But the governmental policy. But I'd be thinking I'm going to make a life for myself here in Europe. I talked to one of my friends, he's dating a Ukrainian girl from this before the war. He's like, she earns more in Ireland on the funding than the wage she earned in Ukraine. And he's like, she's not going back. And individually, there's individual goods, and then there's goods of nations, and that's going to be a very hard thing to overcome.
A girl named Valeria invited me to Ottawa in Canada. That's a Canadian capital. And she works in the film industry, so she was very helpful arranging a speaking event. Ever so grateful to have me there, and I was grateful to be received. She is a refugee in Canada. She has a Russian husband. Okay. They were living in Moscow. They left during the war, the beginning of the war. They've come to Canada. She volunteers. She raises money as best she can. She got so bitter with her colleagues at work. She works on a TV show. They're doing foods of the world every day, different country. Last day of this series is Ukrainian food. So everybody there to show solidarity. This is like this Eurovision shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's they buy Ukrainian flags, get a Ukrainian cake for her, and then she's losing her mind but smiling. She's like, how many tourniquets could I have bought for this?
Yeah.
She sends a battle belt over for her cousin. She buys it, he'll have it Nova Post a few days. It took her 2 days pay to pay for this amazing battle belt. Ukraine did take her 2 weeks. So that's what she's doing from the other side. So many volunteers, so many people sending their wages, the remittances. Can you imagine how large the remittances would be to Ukraine from the refugees from the Ukrainian diaspora in Canada? In Saskatchewan, Canada has more Ukrainians than any other nation, non-Ukrainian. I didn't know that till the war.
Right.
The people, I've done a lot of media interviews, and for a local radio station in Saskatchewan, that's where they all originally went. when you're waiting for a radio interview, you have to hear what's on the radio for like 10, 15 minutes till you get your spot. They were talking about the war on a local radio station, like how Times Radio talks about the war. They were talking about towns and advances. They mentioned Zaporizhzhia Oblast. You know what I mean? This was happening. They don't say that on CNN even. You know, they don't say that on CBC, BBC. This is a local colloquial radio station. But that's a Ukrainian... I would venture to say there's 500,000 people with Ukrainian blood in a province of, I don't know, about 1.5 million.
Yeah.
So I see how this war is working out, how we have, like you said before, I think it's 20% of the support we get is through volunteers. And if you donate to me, if you donate to you're a volunteer. I mean, you make ad revenue, right?
Yeah.
But look at the work you do. Look at the hours you put in. Like Jake Bro told me how he does his. You know what I mean? He's got 100 tabs open. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Doing it. I hope he's making a good living. He's also giving away money to Ukraine. He's a volunteer. You're a volunteer. There's people all over the world. They're giving their $10, $20. I've never said this before, but if you know your history, it's just like the old days, how the IRA would send a bagman over to Boston, to New York. People gave their 20 to 1,000 if they were Irish, regardless of their social class. They're not leaving, like you said, they're not leaving this to the experts. You know, the whole world, I'm going to risk getting shot here because I mentioned Corona. I feel a lot of people felt a loss of agency through the Corona lockdowns around the world.
Yeah.
And I think on a personal level, the Ukraine war, whether they had a connection or not, it's wrong what's happening. But I think what we came out of in Corona and then this war, it lit a fire under certain people's asses. We got a lot of help. No way we'll lose, but I think that'll be determined by Western governments, the terms of victory.
Well, the big one, I don't want to talk politics, but the big one is the, what do you call it, elections next year.
Oh, yes.
That's the big one. Trump has already said he'll come out and 24 hours he'll finish the war. That does not mean Ukraine's getting its 1991 border. No, I mean, like, not if it doesn't happen for then and he gets in, and I don't know how that outcome's going to look, but if he got in power right now, to end this war right now, it's not going to be the 1991 border, that's for sure. But the future of Ukraine relies so much on this. People don't actually realise how access to the Black Sea is so important for Ukraine, and that Crimea is a big part of that, and so is the whole other region through that.
Yes,
but
of course.
Crimea is massive because Odessa, Crimea, although it's so important. So there's if Ukraine lose, the West has lost, and the West has shown that then a powerful country can land grab.
Mr. Trump. I don't know how he did it. Phenomenal. He, wow. I don't wish ill upon anybody. You know, I hope that Mr. Biden, his health. You know, I'll never understand why people take joy in the follies of a president. I would hope that America would have the best president, because so much in the world rides on America. And America's fallen out of favor in the world. It certainly doesn't have the luster of my childhood of Chuck Norris.
God, no.
No.
And a lot of Americans actually don't realize it. That I think it's like, no. The people that love America are 330 million people that live here. The other 7.5 billion are like, what's happening over there? Like,
well, no. I pray for America's success, and
Same.
I'm an atheist. But I think in Mr. Trump's mind, only the reference would have observed that perhaps he can just snap the finger and cut off the weapon supply. I don't know the legality of that and what you would have to do with Congress, but I see no wall on the southern border. Do you?
No.
Built? No.
Some have got built, yeah.
But I just pray for the this is the natural enemy. Has always been Russia. It's always been Russia.
It needed to be Russia.
It needed to be Russia.
How do we justify spending over $500 billion a year? So, no, half a trillion, how do we justify that without an enemy?
Well, I know politicians don't care, business people don't care, but it's a hell of a price that Ukraine has to pay.
Yeah.
In blood.
Well, and Ukraine is paying it for a lot of these opportunists too. The amount of money being made out of this war is insane. From media, because the media was dead. The media had zero followers, zero legitimacy, nothing out of the Rona. Nothing. It was gone. It was in tatters.
Sky News was...
Because they lied.
I know the figures.
About everything.
They were at 1 million a day views. First 3 months of this war, they had 7 million views a day on terrestrial TV.
Yeah.
And I know that because one of the producers now works for Times Radio. And I've been there twice because I've done good on their analytics. And that's my job.
Yeah. America is benefiting massively out of this war. Now, I'm not saying that is the main reason they're supporting, but if it's not a factor to take into this, people are kidding themselves. You don't think the biggest industry in the world is the American defense industries? That is benefiting. Fuck it. If you don't believe me, go look at all the stock prices of Lockheed, BAE, systems, like things like this, these massive ones. Now, I'm not saying this is why they're supporting the war, but it's definitely a factor coming out of it as well. And we're seeing how these weapons work that are untested, and America need to display that they are not to be fucked with. And if America lose this, what are we going to say? Russia will go, righto, 10 years' time, we're going to take it again. We're going to build up, we're going to do this. Or, we're just going to then go into whatever other country. China will see the same with other areas. It's such a difficult thing, but is there a growing distaste for war in the West? I believe so also.
Well, I feel so bad for all the people of Western nations who are suffering from war fatigue. I can't appeal to the virtues of people, but I can appeal to their self-interest and to the people. That if should we ever have to go into the third war, would we not be better off if our enemy was infinitely weaker?
Oh yeah.
Well, sorry. Before I go back to Ukraine at the end of the month, don't ask me how it came about, but I have a presentation. The executives will be there for a large European weapons producer, a publicly traded company. But I can't talk to them about atrocities in Ukraine, about civilian losses, about the medical effort, because it would fall upon deaf ears. I have to figure out a way to sell that to their self-interest, that they help us. And the only way I can think of that is to not call it directly what it is, but to appeal to their self-interest, that they help us to help them.
Yep.
Thermal scopes. Everything happens at night. They will not win us the war, but they maintain our lines. They maintain our lines in our favor. All those fancy weapon systems, they testing on the new test ground, which is Ukraine. Would it not be favorable to have stable lines to test those? They don't work so well on dynamic lines. Anyway, that's more than I should say about that, but that's the way the world works.
Yeah.
I need to appeal to their self-interest.
Oh yeah, and the element of wearing down our largest adversary. It's absolutely there, and the people doing that is in Ukrainian blood. That's the realism of it. Now, I'm not saying that is the reason people support it in Congress or whatever. I'd like to think it's in the best reasons. But again, that's another outcome coming out of this is, hey, we get to wear down our biggest adversary of this. And this is, and people are going to fucking hate me for saying this, and I don't care. This is why I believe we've given Ukraine enough to sustain, not to win. We've given them 100 Bradleys. America's got between 4,000 and 6,000 Bradleys, which are out of date infantry fighting vehicle. We give them 25%. You're talking 1,000. You don't think they can do that? This is my putting my tinfoil hat on a little bit, but is it in interest of America and the West? And that's America's 50% of the West anyway, more so, at least in military power. Is it in their interest to wear down Russians over years because you get to wear down them attritionally rather than beat them in a few days and then pull back. And the unfairness of this is then Ukraine has to be plunged into war for a minimum of 2 years. Like, it's going to be a minimum of 2 years. And horrific atrocities happen, and economies basically collapse. Like, and this is one of the things is, at the end of the day, I don't believe we're giving to win. We're giving to sustain and to lengthen, which I think is fucking disgusting. And people will call me all sorts for that, either pro-Russia or Ukraine. But I believe that to be the truth.
I have an autoimmune disease. Not even one year into the war, I developed through stress. I know others like that. An autoimmune disease. Do you know anything about those?
I have a friend that has Crohn's.
Yeah, and I know I wouldn't have that if it wasn't for the war. What's happening to Ukraine as a whole and their soul?
Yeah. I've even spoken to...
A lot of people have autoimmune diseases. I know people who they have... Doesn't matter.
The nation's going to go through so much. I've even spoken of the men on the front line, and this is something I don't see given, and I've been like, to me, this is a game-changing bit of equipment. It's not a HIMARS, it's not an F-16. Give everyone a set of fucking Peltors. Give everyone a set of Peltor earmuffs. There's two reasons. One, people don't realise, if you've never shot a fucking gun, you don't realise how loud an automatic weapon is, or artillery, how fucking loud that is. You do permanent damage every shot fired if you don't have your ears covered. Plus, Peltors give communications. It actually does. It's active hearing protection, those who aren't aware. So it lifts sounds of voices, footsteps, things like this. It makes your hearing better, but decreases gunshots. That's how it works, and your communications built in. Give everyone a pair of them. And the second reason is if you have a whole nation of men deaf, fucking deaf, deaf people don't perform as well in work after this. You need to make sure your sort of veteran affairs are in, because Ukraine's going to have a massive set of young men, particularly young men. And who are the big breadwinners in a society, particularly an Eastern society?
25 to 50. That's your golden.
Exactly, and you're going to and the amount of people that actually are in that is actually not that fucking many, especially in an aging society with a low replacement rate. And that's where I'm like, we should be looking after these guys as well on medical hearing, like fucking Peltors. You could give everyone a set of Peltors in the whole country for way less. Like, I think they're about $600 a pair. That's fucking expensive, but we're giving billions. Give it a guarantee that makes a big shift on the front line.
The 3M set is about €200. Those work fine.
Yeah.
I've got them on my helmet.
But something like that, yeah.
Yep. I
Like,
agree.
you know, I have a lot of issues with how things are being conducted in the interest of the West, not in the interest of Ukraine. If it was purely in the interest of Ukraine, 18 months ago, we would have had pilots training. Actually, no, I take that back. It would have been 9 years ago, in 2014, we would have had pilots flying F-16s.
Way of the world, isn't it?
Yep. It's horrible, but I don't know. Maybe there's this overarching idea in the West that Ukraine can't win because they're talking. We just started training pilots now. If you in Congress or whoever really believed Ukraine could have won on the 24th of February or on the 24th of April or any time through this, if you really believed that, like you do, like other people do, why wouldn't have you done that then? Strip out the stuff. It's going to be stripped out anyway. Like, I haven't got to look inside the Leopard 2s that got sent to Ukraine, but I guarantee the radio systems, some of the thermal stuff, whatever, is probably not in that because, fucking hell, there's equipment that America and Australia don't share with each other. Lots of equipment. And we're closest allies. Germany wouldn't share shit with us either. Heaps of it. So I guarantee not all of it's in there.
The nuclear sub debacle.
Oh, God, don't get me started. But, but things like that. But around the other stuff, well, it's the same with the Abrams. Thousands of Abrams sitting around, and we've committed 30 that are going to be with the non-whatever armor, non-composite stuff. That's not a big deal. It's non-composite stuff, like whatever. But
30.
For the military-industrial complex of America to supply less IFVs than my unit in Adelaide had, I'm like, hang on, fuck off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
It's above my pay grade.
No, it's above. Sorry, we're just spitballing.
I don't get
here.
paid. I know. I just try to keep it in the day.
Yeah. No, I think what you're doing is incredible. Have you had much to do with, like, the nationalism side of Ukraine? Because this is what we keep hearing about is these Nazis, the pro-nationalists. And we know those factions. We know those factions exist. But, you know, do you have any personal stories from this stuff?
Well, the origins of UDA, Ukrainian Volunteer Army, are from the so-called right sector. Hospitallers, I wear an UDA patch. That's our issued kit. I don't know much about their ideology. I don't know much of the backstory. You know, many comment warriors will say, you're fighting a war you don't even know what it's about. I'm there, motherfucker. And I've never been so happy. So I don't know about that. I don't know about Azov. All the people I met from Azov are nice. We talk about coffee when we have it, you know. We talk about football. I've not really heard much of this stuff. I've heard that the black and red flag. I've heard several things about it, that it's a right-wing nationalist flag. I've heard people tell me that it's like how Japan has a war flag and a peacetime flag, like in all the World War II movies. I looked into that.
Yeah. If
Japan's in a state of war, the flag changes. Okay, so I've heard that story too. It's the war flag. I don't know. I'm not really qualified to talk about that stuff. But the people I've met are just that. They're people.
Yeah.
I don't know much about their politics. I couldn't even tell you what party Zelensky's with. My commanding officer, she's quite progressive. I think I think their goal of the party is she's in a party where their goal is to become a member of the EU. That's their ultimate platform. Sounds pretty liberal to me.
Yeah. I set up an interview today actually that will come in a couple of weeks with a guy of the Foreign Legion who's a black guy. And his first message to me was like, oh, hey man, he's like, oh, I love what you do. I've looked in your stuff. And he's like, man, apparently I'm a black Nazi. And I'm like, fuck. I'm like,
he's
will you
not
talk
that
about
Nance
that?
fella, is he?
No. This guy, he's only just popped up on my radar.
I know someone who knew him.
No, he's popped up from another guy who's very legit.
Yeah.
Really legit, actually. And I'm like, that's interesting. And he's joking about it. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. And of course it exists in these hooligans and stuff. It's just something I have to ask because I'm interested in that and how that sort of breeds and comes about.
I don't understand it. What I have been told by people, and this is just what I get a feeling like about the celebrities I told you earlier, how they support the war. This is all my friends telling me, and I find that very interesting. You know, it's like I'm told that a lot of these right-wing people were the volunteers originally in Donbass who fought from 2014 on. A lot of them preach that there will be a day that Russia will come, and most of mainstream Ukraine wrote them off.
Well, I used to go to a bar in Kharkiv.
I think their stock has risen since the war.
I used to go to a bar in Kharkiv where you weren't allowed to speak Russian. You could only speak English or Ukrainian. Sorry?
That's pretty far east.
Yeah, and I was there for a couple of weeks before the war. And it was actually, most people went there actually to practice their English. And they fucking loved me going there because they're like, you're a native English speaker. Not many native English speakers actually come to Kharkiv and go to this bar.
You would have been popular.
It was the best time I've had in my life. It honestly was. It was fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
It was fucking brilliant. I had a great time.
Second to none.
Yeah. The people are beautiful, whatever. But they were all telling me, oh yeah, a war's coming. 100% a war's coming. And this is where I feel my tinfoil hat's coming back on. Is I'm like, if they knew, I don't think the fucking CIA knew? No? I don't think we should have prepared for this shit. Like, things like, I don't know. But, like, I was there because I thought a war was going to start. Where are the preparations for this? Like, outside in the West. And even you could look at the political inside Ukraine too and go, why are you building roads and not arming this? Why are you not trying to get into whatever? Like, it's a big problem.
Well, and I'm fading fast, but I've thought about this in recent months. World War II. They didn't call it World War II in the 40s. I think that was a term coined in the 50s. You know, what do they call in the future the war of 39 and 40? The phony war? Yeah, nobody really cares until it affects them.
No.
So we don't really know how this is going to play out. We don't.
No, of course not.
We don't. And there could be other countries drawn into this conflict.
You make a good point of no one cares until it affects them. And this is the reason people care about Ukraine and don't care about Syria, Mali, Burkina Faso.
Goes back to what I said starting this.
Very start.
Europe, holy
People
shit.
care because it's in Europe and the sanctions may slightly affect them, or fuel is slightly higher, or gas is higher, things like this. It affects them. And, you know, at the end of the day, people are like, oh, they're white Europeans. Oh, shit. And that appeals to that. And people don't think it. If that wasn't a factor, where is Syria's $100 billion? Where's all the Syrian refugees on tens of millions or 10 million? So that is a factor of this. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm saying it's a factor.
Well, I live in Sweden before the war. There's plenty of Syrians there.
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty of Syrians there. My father's family's Lebanese. There was no Lebanon when they immigrated to Canada 120 years ago. They were Syrians. Then all of a sudden one day, it's a family joke. Hey, we're Lebanese now. What's that? Lesbians? Just a family joke.
Yeah.
But nobody knows how this is going to play out, Willie.
No.
I just want the best outcome for my friends. And if they don't have those opportunities that you have, that I have, that we take for granted, I could have done anything my whole life. I could have had such an easy life. People say, I said to them once, a bit controversial, I'm not proud to be Canadian. Not at all. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I can have the easiest life I want in life. And it's true, not to be diminutive of anybody's struggles. I chose an interesting one to travel at a young age and never really been home. But any day I want, I've just been in my hometown for the first time in many, many years. And for the first time, I've been in peace with myself that if I wanted to, I could go back and live there. And I would have an easy life.
The pension in Canada would be higher than the majority of people living on Earth. Absolutely the majority. But to be in the top 1% is $30,000. The pension in Canada is probably not far off that.
Even at 37, I'm probably not the best marriage material. I haven't given too much thought to a pension. I'm just trying to, I probably pulled off a few miracles with a lot of help from people online in Ukraine. In my head, I just want to get to Christmas. And not that I celebrate, I don't know what I can do. I'll go as long as I can.
Yeah.
I'll go as long as I can, but I don't owe anybody.
No.
I'm just going to give my best for as long as I can.
Mate, I really think it's a privilege to sit down and talk to you about this, and I think that the shit you've done is enough for anyone. It's incredible, and you should be really, really proud of yourself for doing that. You're putting yourself in that, and you're continuing to do it. What you're doing, it's a thing for humanity. And you know me, I'm a hopeless human. I believe in humans.
Yeah.
And I believe in, I've been a combatant, so I have a lot of empathy for combatants anywhere in the world. I've got empathy for the Taliban too. I do. Would I go back and wipe my face the earth? Yeah. Would I sit down and talk with one? Absolutely. So I have empathy for everyone, and I'm hopeless for humans. I think humans underestimate themselves, underestimate how good we are. We're told time and time again that humans are a bad thing. Humans are a fucking best thing that's ever happened in the universe, and we may be alone. In the infinite space-time of the universe, we might be all that's fucking it. And the way we treat each other and go about shit like this war is fucking disgusting. We're it. Like, that's fucking it. But I'm a hopeless for humans. But I think someone like yourself puts 99% of people to fucking shame. That you are willing to, at any point later in your life, and you're walking the walk of what you believe in. I think you're an incredible guy, and it's a privilege to sit down and, I don't know how long we've been talking, a couple of hours maybe.
Enjoyed it. We've still got to eat.
I've still got to eat, and it's late, but it's been an absolute privilege. And from myself personally, and I believe everyone listening to this point, thank you for what you do. It's incredible, and let us know where we can find you, where people can support you, how people can support you.
Well, I prefer YouTube now. I have an Instagram, Ukraine TBIC, the best I can. I've been winging this shit since February 24th. Try not to plan too far into the future. But it started with Instagram. I really liked my YouTube. I really enjoy it. The comments, how well thought out people are, how well wishing they are. I even got my own favourite troll. I look out for him. He's an older South African man. I worry about his health if I don't see his trolling. But follow my YouTube, Ukraine, TBIC. Just type in Brandon Mitchell. I've got about 70,000 followers, and that's how I fundraise to pay for everything. I'll finish with this. A lot's changed in the war, and this is why I don't promise another miracle year out of my ass. It keeps getting better and better. I never had expectations, but I desperately want children, Willie. I didn't know how to feel about that before. I thought that I had to have the house, I had to have the mortgage paid. I had all these preconditions. But what I've seen in Ukraine, I desperately want children of my own. And children are so important. And so much of our generation will not have children. And sadly for the women, they find out when they want them, it's too late. I want to do the best I can and hopefully get out of the war, and I want to have a family. I'd be a good dad. So many people would be if they would just try. So many Ukrainian sons that won't come home. Thank you very much for your time. It's been an honor and a privilege.
No, thank you, brother. Thank you. The pleasure. Trust me, the pleasure is mine. All the links down below will be to your profile, to whatever we need. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And let's go get a steak.
Let's get something to eat. I'm starving.
Yeah. I've been blabbing. Thank you. Thank you, guys.